Alex Jones, and I'm here to tell you folks, the world has fallen. The fascist globalist overlords, they're implementing the Great Reset. You don't believe me? I've seen the tapes. Watch it, folks. Watch as these pot-bellied Zoomer goblins work with the Illuminati to pit us against each other. I promise I'd be a good boy.
I'm a good boy.
There's only one cure, folks, and that's liberty. And there's no better channel to find freedom than Fabian Liberty. Anarchy is order. Government is civil war.
I just got three things to say. God bless our troops. God bless America. And gentlemen, start your engine!
I got you, sir. Let me get my shoes. Hold on, your head is bloody. So we gotta move to the front.
Not only do you have a micro penis, which is an important point, but on top of that, you refuse to share your Pokemon cards, and that's not nice.
So first of all, a 2-inch penis is not a micro penis, okay? And for your second point, my Pokemon cards are all mine, and I don't have to share them if I don't want them. I work super hard to get them, and they're really special to me. So I'll keep them.
You don't understand. You can't continue to play with us if you refuse to share your
Not fair.
cards.
I'm Ukrainian, and this is my bridge. I'm Ukrainian, and this is my gas station. I'm Ukrainian, and this is my school.
2 seconds earlier.
Would you let a Jew work out in your gym without paying if he claimed that the membership was promised to him by God 4,000 years ago?
No. Bro, you are fucking...
That's a good question.
Yo, you're fucking funny. No, I mean, everyone pays.
What if he tried bombing you for that?
Bro, I mean, that would be like some crazy crime. Some acted, I don't even know, there, I don't know.
Are you taking a political stance right now?
Is found in my house. That's called a bird grasshopper. I'm gonna eat him.
He has not been transparent. I mean, there may be...
They are making routine announcements about the things they are finding, and they are inviting questions about the things they are finding every single day.
But by definition, he's not being transparent. They're not providing data for the things that they say that they have found evidence of. They just aren't.
The White House has provided...
You can make announcements, and he also did admit that he actually...
So you just don't believe it. I mean, they are providing information. You just choose not to believe that it's true.
We're seeing about 13 months for these brain and spine MRIs. Cool. Canada, where healthcare is free, but only if you can afford to wait.
Step 10, states must publish their own map and allow internal challenges to their own map. So the government has published a map. They have invited the states to challenge the map. Then states have submitted initial proposals, and they then have to publish their own map and allow challenges.
Wait, who's challenging it within the state?
Well, organized interest groups, environmental groups, like I don't know who specifically, but literally anybody. This is, right. I want to say something because it's very important I say this. This is the Biden administration's process for its own bill. They wanted this to happen. This is how liberal government works now.
This is something they instituted for this bill.
For their bill. This is a bill passed by Democrats with a regulatory structure written by Democratic administration. Okay.
Right.
Step 11.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures, активные мероприятия in the language of the KGB, or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
For our most tricky disagreements, seeking the truth and seeking to convince others of the truth might not be the right place to start. In fact, our reverence for the truth might be a distraction that's getting in the way of finding common ground and getting things done.
free fries when you get vaccinated? I got vaccinated. You're saying I could get this? These delicious fries? Wait a minute. But there's also a burger element to this? Let me check with Bill Neathart. Is it too early in the day to eat a burger? No. This can be breakfast? Okay. I want you to look at this and think about, again, some people love hamburgers, some don't. Really want to respect all ways of life. But if this is appealing to you, just think of this when you think of vaccination. Vaccination. I'm getting a very good feeling about vaccination right this moment. Thank you.
When I win, I will immediately bring prices down starting on day one.
Men to woman, or woman to men.
Man to woman.
From penis to vagina.
In the shower, on a walk, the Dylan hour. Feeling sweet, feeling sour. I feel nothing. The Dylan hour.
Hello and welcome to Wales. We understand being a refugee isn't easy. They go through so much. Fleeing your country is difficult, but Wales wants to help you feel welcome. The Welsh Refugee Council is here to help you.
Tell me you love me. Say it like you mean it. Say it like you mean it. You message one other guy ever again whether we're together or not. You understand me?
But if you're a man who's stuck with a woman and you don't even get along with each other and it's a show marriage and you have to be together and you argue all the time and you're sexually repressed and you're being promised in secret that you can go to an island and finally be pleasured and satisfied, no one's ever going to find out, that's how you end up on the island. So this whole monogamy garbage that's being pushed by the West, especially amongst our elites, is the reason we have the biggest problem with pedophilia, and they don't have this problem in South America.
The whole point of this is for me to begin to reintroduce myself. I'm doing this both personally for me, but in a professional capacity. Moving forward, the majority of what you will see will be me speaking in a professional capacity. My goal is to continue to help give a...
Libertarians, and I'm always arguing with them, hey guys, if no one pays taxes, then who's going to stop the fires? Who's going to stop all the violent crime? Dummies. And then the LA fire happened, and the fire department didn't stop the fire because I guess they ran out of budget for water, and the police didn't stop the looting because I guess they didn't want to get near the fire, and so I guess I lost that argument. My bad.
So, I was talking to a friend of mine, and he was like, how can I help you? I'm like, hey man, the stuff I do online is like, just kind of me. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, I have to compartmentalize you guys online and like my personal life. So like when like personal friends and stuff are like, how can I help you? How can I spread it around? I'm like, man, I'm a right-wing anarchist on top of the fact that like, this is also kind of my job. So wait, Marcus in another video? Why are you so, okay? Yeah, I clicked it before. I'm not going to immediately start the stream with this video. I appreciate you though. Mark's at work too, by the way. Oh, okay. Yeah, I clicked it before. I'll check it out in a second. But anyways, so I'm like, yeah, I kind of have to compartmentalize like what I do as like a job, because like it's not the same thing as like working in an office, right? It's different because these are my ideas, these are my opinions. This is like me sharing and opening up and being vulnerable about my personal life. And then kind of the same thing with you guys. It's creating a parasocial relationship. So like for my own mental health, when like friends or family talk to me and they're like, oh, how's it going? I'm like, good. You know what I mean? I'm like, fun. Like I let people know when I was on Tim Pool, you know, like when I was going out of town. You know what I mean? If I go out of town some more, you know, like they'll be aware of like shit like that. But I'm just not really trying to talk about it or like have them support me a bunch, right? And he was like, yeah, it's just like I want people to watch your content because you're like so smart and you have so many good ideas. But like I was like gonna send somebody over, and it's Fabian Liberty as seen on Temple. Thanks. And it was like, I sent somebody over to your stream, and then like as soon as your stream started, you were talking about how like white people don't put enough lotion on their asshole. And I'm just like, how the fuck am I supposed to convince people that like that you have good ideas when that's what you're doing? And I was like, and I thought about it a little bit. And I want you guys to know that that conversation is exactly why the intro video it's one of many reasons why there is a video of Andrew Tate beating a 14 or 15-year-old girl with a belt and screaming, is because one, fuck Andrew Tate. We don't support that shit, and I want everyone to know. But two, I also have something in the intro video that I see the viewers go down when the dark part of the intro cuts on, and they're like, ooh, I wasn't ready for little girls inviting Muslims into Wales, and like Casey Anthony, and like an underage girl getting abused on camera. I don't know that I like this, because it's like, this isn't for you part of my intro. It's like if you're not down for this, you're not down for the stream, because I'm liable to go wild. I'm liable to say some dumb shit or some crazy shit. And so it's like all of you guys are the guys that made it through the sieve, right? It's like instead of well, Mark, to be fair, there is a trigger warning before the trigger warning, which is when I'm doing my Alex Jones impression, and it says Alex Jones does not support it. The only thing we support is like something and dead baby jokes. Like it's the pre-trigger warning before that part of the trigger warning to let you know that I might just hop on here and start talking about like how black pussy looks like Arby's roast beef sandwich. Like I might just say that. And like I want you guys to know that you're here and we're here together. I have a daughter now. It's hard to get through that clip. Yeah, I have the same situation. Yeah, like it's a rough one for me too. I'll be honest, having a daughter made me a bitch in a lot of ways. Like not just shit that deals with like women and like, you know, protecting people, but just like it just changes you. You're just more emotional. You're more in touch with your feminine side, I guess. Once you have daughters, unless you're like one of those base alpha male people that only has daughters because the sperm is so strong and I'm just man, and watch me eat steak on Instagram and don't you wish you were like me? I wake up at 5 o'clock, unless you're one of those. That's why Grace Budd, dude, why do you keep bringing up Grace Budd letter, man? I know I brought it up fucking last fucking stream, but. See, Shadow Warden is now a believer. Chris, you're better off not knowing what the Grace Budd letter is, but if you're into really dark shit, Google it. All right, let me see what Mark showed me. Let's see what was Mark sent me some horse video. God damn it. My bad, guys. Mark said this was good reaction content. I have no idea what's going on, but apparently it's a horse that kicks. Deadly horse kick. Does this say mare kills stallion? Wait a minute. Is that a fucking horse that's gonna beat another horse to death? Can I even show this on fucking stream? Is this like you coming after the stream? Like what's going on? Dude didn't have the right attitude to deal with the deadly horse right there. Also, what is going on with this horse's penis right now? Like, I'm just saying, like, why does the horse look like a fucking like a bad dragon dildo right now?
Hi.
Were they trying to get these things to breed? Was somebody jacking off a horse before this? And they're like, you're going to breed. Yeah, I'm not a rancher, so I'm picking it up as we go along, guys. Oh, I missed that because I was reading chat. I'm sorry. Hold on, let me go back. No, I'm in my Vosh arc, right? Like I'm trying to get into the mind of Vosh right now. Is that it? Dude, the horse just shit itself to death. That's fucked up, Mark. Why do you have this saved? I'm not gonna zoom in on the rest of it. All right, like we're good. I'm good. Why you thought that was good? That's not good React content. I beg to differ. I mean, it is apropos to me talking about the dark, the dark trigger warning in the beginning clip. But like, I don't know why would you like that? It's just a video of a horse getting kicked to death and then shitting itself dead and flipping around. Like you need help, Mark. This is a call for help. This is Mark trying to let me know that like we got to talk. That was weird. I did not find that. I mean, like, I didn't find it particularly disturbing. I found it just disturbing enough to not be interesting. Like, the Grace Bud letter was definitely, like, that one broke me. This one was just, like, kind of like a why. All right, you want to see some really crazy shit? I got one for you, Mark. If you're still here and you're not busy working. Because here you go. It's a new fear. You guys ready for a new fear? Are you guys ready to be afraid again about something? Like, are you guys ready to develop a new anxiety when you're just out in the world? A new thing to be terrified of. You guys ready? Because it's gonna happen whether or not you're ready. But I'm really just hyping up a new fear. Like, people left. Concurrent viewers are gone. Here you go. New fear. And in it goes. And out. Ow! Birds just do that? Guys, so when you're shut up. It's not AI. This shit has happened before to like I think like there was like a famous actress that this happened to like years and years ago. No, I didn't snatch her eye. It didn't it just went in to like see if there was something in her eye or like a bug or something. But to the actress? No, the actress like became like permanently blind in her eye. I don't know about this lady. It's just a random video I found on the internet. Yeah, you think Alfred Hitchcock had a point now? That's fair. Oh, fuck. Did you guys see this person? I was curious if anybody else had seen it. Did you see this random Twitter user? Okay, this random Twitter user, he's got like 7,000 fucking... Oh, wait, no, he's a YouTuber. Okay, hold on. Oh, this guy has 167,000 subscribers and only 85 videos. Okay, I thought he was just a random person because he only had like 6,000 Twitter followers when I first saw this go. But did you see this person just utterly and completely demolish Pokimane? She deleted the post. It's beautiful, boys. Am I the only one that saw it? I mean, I can't be the only one that saw it because it currently has 14.3 million views, and Pokimane had to fucking talk about it. And in her talk about it, she just talked about how she's so happy that there are so many good people and good YouTubers that took up for her, and stood up for her because of everything. It's on Twitter. I'll show you. Don't act like you don't know who fucking Pokimane is. She's like one of the most famous female streamers, and she's just kind of like a softcore porn thing for like teen boys, and does a lot of ooh-oos and a lot of, oh, I'm so cute, except she's like 30 or about to be 30, and it's weird. And also, if you make YouTube videos like talking about how she's a bad person or that she did something wrong, she'll send an army of people and lawyers after you and like copyright strike you and like abuse the copyright system as much as she can. And she's like willing to take you to court if you say that she's a bad person. And then she's done it multiple times, been like, I had no idea that was a thing. I had no idea that my people were copyright striking people. My bad, guys. And then like the next time somebody does it is like, yeah. Has Pokimane had an accidental nip slip? But dude, this shit like, let me see if I can bring it over here. I read this and I was like, ooh, the fact that Pokimane saw this had to hurt. She's crying about it while pretending this wasn't what she was crying about. I'm just gonna read this post out, and like most of the replies are like, clearly use Chat GPT because it's got dashes in it, which maybe he did, but nevertheless, this shit hurts. You're 28. I mean, not 18, not 80. But every year you get more self-assured and somehow less self-aware. This isn't growth, it's arrested development in HD. Streaming hours at a time daily since adolescence didn't empower you, it just froze you in digital puberty. You talk like a life coach, post like a thirst trap, and react like a teenager whose ego is held together by brand deals and soft lighting. This isn't harassment. It's grown adults pointing out that grown adulthood doesn't look like this. And if life really gets better every year, why do you still act like you're one comment away from spiraling into a subtweet? If this is confidence, why does it only show up when there's a camera and a curated audience? You didn't outgrow the internet. You just aged into it like spoiled milk with a ring light, preserved by validation, paid for by the same men who sexualized you into a career that you deny you capitalized on. This isn't targeted hate. It's a wake-up call, a reminder that the bubble you've built, full of orbiters, yes men, and men with spare cash who defend you for a crumb of attention, isn't reality. And it clearly rattled you to discover that outside of the curated echo chamber, not everyone knows you, likes you, or wants to see a grown woman caption "Angie" with her cleavage staged like a thumbnail. That's not empowerment. It's arrested development wrapped in a push-up bra craving for attention. And most people don't find infantilized thirst traps endearing. They find them sad. You're pushing 30, but still living like a girl whose future is stuck buffering, pausing real life just long enough to keep the illusion playing. So here's the thing. It's not black and white, and it's not some simple weird influx of weirdos commenting on my age that you've convinced yourself of. It's not just the internet being mean to you. The reality is the average adult, the one who isn't lost in your bubble, doesn't want to see a grown woman sexualizing herself for attention, no matter how much she tries to wrap it up in the guise of being knowledgeable and self-assured. The truth is, you've made your career off sexualization, and yet you'll never fully admit to it because you've convinced yourself you're more than that. But the longer you keep pretending, the more you'll realize that it's not the world that's the problem. It's you acting like you've got something to prove at 28, when honestly, you're just holding on to a version of yourself that doesn't even exist anymore. Grow up. And here's the real irony. Your entire career is built on appeasing random shitty people. But the shitty people you're worried about, the ones criticizing for your age or your looks, are just as shitty as the ones who sexualize you and throw their money at you. You've spent years building a career that thrives on attention, both from people who want to elevate you and from people who reduce you to nothing more than a commodity. The truth is, you've let both sides feed your ego, and you'll never admit it because they're the same people who keep you in business. So maybe it's time to realize growing older won't make you miserable. It's selling out to the same people you pretend not to care about. That's the real trap, a self-inflicted cage that's stunted your maturity, far worse than any comment or, quote, harassment. Oh, dude, I read that and I was like, Jesus Christ, that is the most brutal takedown I've ever... It's like, you know, like when you're a kid and you're like, someone's like, kill him with kindness. And you're like, I don't understand that. That doesn't make sense. This is what they're talking about. They're not talking about just being like, oh, okay, I'm doing great. Smile and walk away. This is true killing with kindness. This is just like, nah, I'm going to give you nothing but complete, unadulterated truth. And it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt bad. Turn her over. She's cooked on that side. Yeah, dude. Oh, fuck, dude. I'm actually going to go follow this guy on YouTube. I don't even understand his content or what he does. It's like he does random medieval like, or is he just a gaming streamer? Okay. Maybe not. I can't tell. Whatever. I'm following this guy. I'm subscribing. Dude, it's like, it hurt. Genuinely, I was like, dude, how do you recover from that? I mean, she deleted the post and then posted like some random shit like, I don't care. You know, it's just, I don't care at all. Did you guys see this shit? This shit was wild. I'm just curious if you saw this shit. Is that not fucking wild? That feels crazy. This feels crazy to you, right? JD Vance might have killed him, but you know, setting that aside, whatever couch disease, you know, he gave the Pope, like, is it not wild to anybody that they just were like, yeah, the Pope's dead. We'll have a reporter outside of the Vatican or one of these churches, and we'll just make sure she's in a. Is this a niqab? It's not a hijab. It's a niqab, right? I can never remember which one's which. Oh no, the niqab is the one that is the. Which one is just the head covering? God damn it. Oh, it's a Shayla. That's what this one is. Okay, sorry. Because it's not a hijab, because it's got the, like, it just, like, throws over the shoulder. I knew it had a different name. I had to look it up. Yeah, niqab is the ninja costume. And the burqa is the one with, like, the fucking, even the eyes are kind of covered. Wait, did he die exactly on Easter? I thought he died after Easter. Yeah. Yeah, no, he died the day he died Monday. Like, what do you? I was like, you had me fucked up for a minute. I'm not saying Jesus is real, okay? But if Jesus was real, if God was real, and the Pope died on Easter, like specifically on Easter, I'd be like, That's the Durka? What do you mean that's the Durka? Durka Bakalaka Muhammad Jihad? Yeah, here's your sign. Oh, fuck. I'd forgotten about here's your sign. Here's your sign's so stupid. Here's your sign. Bill Engvall is like the comedian for people that like are middle class but pretend they grew up redneck for some reason. Like Bill Engvall is not a redneck. Like hillbillies and rednecks are not like never were like really into Bill Engvall. It's literally like white people that are middle class that grew up kind of poor that like are having an identity crisis and want to be like, I grew up redneck. Yeah. Oh, pardon me. Oh yeah, you're right. Easter was a day of rest, so Jesus had to take care of the killing of the Pope, the next day. Pope Uncle Ruckus. Oh my God, you're talking about that black guy that wants to be Pope? I don't know if he wants to be. I just know he's like one of the candidates. You guys are fucked up, man. Pope Uncle Ruckus is, God damn it. The right is going to make so many good memes. Because he's a progressive too, so they're going to fucking hate him. So there's so many fascists and ortho bros are going to be making so many fucked up memes about the Pope if he gets elected. The progressive wing of the Catholic Church and like the Lavender Mafia get that dude elected. The memes are going to be great. Isn't it time we had a POC, a Pope of color? I was oh fuck. Oh fuck. I don't know why that's so funny to me that you just typed out POC and I knew what you meant. Oh fuck. But yeah, what are your guys' opinion on abolishing public schools? I was curious what you guys thought about it. I wish I was still like cool with oh God, what's that girl's name? Casimir remembers her name. I'm literally still subscribed to her, so I could find her in my subscriptions. The chick that the Jewish older objectivist, small L libertarian that does just does videos just about education. That's like all she does. Can't remember her fucking name right now. Oh my God. Yeah. Deb Thillman, thank you. If you search her, you won't find her channel. You'll just find a bunch of fucking people shitting on, or people interviewing her, or Carolyn Borisenko doing videos about how she's unhinged. It's kind of funny. That's wild. I'm like scrolling to find her channel, and I cannot find her channel. Yo, this is wild. It's all just places she's appeared on and like people talking shit on her. Oh my God. Carolyn Borisenko has so many videos on Deb Thillman. It is wild. The Reason We Learn, that's what it is. It's a good channel. I like her content. She does great stuff. She does incredibly good deep dives on like education, the problems of public school, and She's one of the few people that really helped me find, resources and stuff on just why like the school voucher system is like a trap. Problem is like once fucking October 7th happened, she went full blown like, if you have anything to say other than 100 support for the state of Israel, you're a fucking anti-Semitic, horrible piece of trash. And like she came after me and then blocked me, and I was like, hey, we were super cool for like a long time. Like what happened? And like I tried to get Casimir to talk to her through me, and she was not having any of it. Like, you're either a Jew that supports the Israeli state or the state of Israel, or like you're against me. And it was like, dude, and of all the libertarians, I've been pretty even-handed on Israel. Like, I'm not like in the Dave Smith fucking pro-Palestine, everything Israel does is a genocide thing. Yeah, she became like retarded tribalistic, and I was like, oh, now I understand what the little L and small L libertarian stands for. Like, you're a libertarian until it comes to your Jewish identity. But yeah, I talked to her a couple times on here, on Twitch and stuff, and we were DMing all the time. She was sending me cool shit all the time. She was like my grandma, man. Like, I loved her. And then it just like, she immediately got fucking super butthurt because I was in any way, shape, or form questioning Israel. It was really wild. I mean, I'm an anarchist, so ultimately I'm against the state of Israel. But yeah, you know what I mean? I'm not calling, like, I would call for Israel to abolish itself. But like, that doesn't mean I'm pro from the river to the sea. You know what I mean? Like, Jesus Christ. It just means I don't like nation states. Israel's not like some special type of evil to me. They want their covenant community with physical removal? Yeah, dude, for sure. And you know what? Whatever covenant communities and like little areas the Jews set up, it'd be 10 times better than anything the fucking Muzzies in the region would do. Jews would be getting shit done. Let's replace Israel with full-blown communism? Let's not. I'm missing something here. It's not, no, this is San Pellegrino. All right, this is bottled water. And this is coffee. But yeah, no, I'm actually pretty sad that Deb Philman and I like don't talk. Cause I'd love to talk with her about like today's topic, like debating the abolishing of schools. You know what I mean? Like, dude, she would be an amazing resource to talk to about that. She has so much knowledge in that area. Is it even pleasant to drink both simultaneously? What? I'm not drinking them at the same exact time. Like, it's a sip of coffee, get a nice little cold brew coffee thing, and then I'm, wash it down so I don't have like lingering coffee in my mouth. A little bubbly water puts it all down the gullet, What's Admiral Gibbs DMing me? Oh God, Admiral Gibbs DMing me of him shitting on fucking, him shitting on counterpoints even more. Dude, Admiral Gibbs has a specific hard-on for counterpoints, and it's fucking hilarious. Hold on, let me see. Here you go. case y'all didn't see counterpoints on Primes last night, this is basically a summary of his stances. Like, he legit hates the counterpoints. I think it's funny. I don't hate counterpoints any more than, the other 99% of people on here that are all, grifting, lying sacks of shit. Like, I just don't find them special. Hey, let's go. Yeah, before this debate gets started, let me just say, before I read the super chat, like, share, subscribe. There's Hey, Shadow Warden, thank you so much. Oh, dude, Shadow Warden with the 12 months. We got another gold coiner in here. Slenzer, Shadow Warden, Rudy. You guys have really been showing your support. Dude, thank you. Fresh and clean. Ain't nobody dope as me. I feel so fresh and so clean. Yeah, that's a good one for a job interview. This one was like mine right here was blase, like, you got this, don't worry about it, like, who gives a fuck. Like, that's kind of my like job interview song for a while. Oh man, like that music, like, so many people are like, music should be an experience, and the pores, like genuinely, music taste to me is disgusting. How dare you? And now that I'm older and I'm more mature, I'm just like, yeah, dude, it's fun. Like, not everything needs to be so fucking deep. And the funny thing is that it's kind of actually, I wouldn't say deep. Deep's not the right word for it, but it is just a song about like the entertainment industry and like J-pop and like forcing girls to starve themselves to maintain their figure, and how like they just want to be fun and have a little bit of chocolate. And so apparently I was paid to react to this. Okay. But already I'm seeing the cars and I'm judging. I'm judging any song that starts off with cars. I'm judging. But I don't know who this is. Okay, I kind of like it. I'm not gonna lie. I know I probably shouldn't like it, but I kind of do like it a little bit. Yeah, but Slipknot was considered new metal, right? Like, Baby Metal tried to create kawaii metal. The lyrics are probably really fucking stupid. I kind of want to know what these lyrics are. It's probably something really fucking dumb, but I dig the vibe. This is a song you listen to drinking and driving. I'm not saying you should drink and drive. Don't drink and drive. But if you do drink and drive, a song with like a baritone, monotone voice with like some stuff that can like that little in the background that'll make your tweeters like really pop, and then at the same time like heavy 808s, like this would be a good song for that. Like, it's a little boring. It's getting a little repetitive. Like, there's no like flow switches so far. It's like I'm a minute in. There's no flow switches. There's no like double time or half time or like a breakdown. And then like when the beat hits again and you expect it, like there's no change in it. It's very kind of like straightforward, but it's fine.
Палец окурка, Крымстон, на вокал стал сам, рифмы писал, дабы ты плясал, гнал мне саны, нас не бросал, канджаман оставил, йоу, встали на места, руки в облака, бау, палец окурка, Крымстон, на вокал стал сам, рифмы писал, дабы ты плясал, гнал мне саны, нас не бросал, раздолбай, вандал, курил, пал-мал, не догнал, не сдал, попробуй поймать.
Yeah, it's getting boring, right? It is like it's definitely like background music. It's not something you would like sing along to or like really try and pay attention to.
Мой генста, банзай, плевок, майк, 7 май, голос изнутри набит. Мой, дай, балаган, обман, накоженный диван, тверк нам не там. Мы на моих кентах, кавабанга, мадам, трясет зад к облакам. Улыбайся, болван, это наш блат, крепкий самосад не достать. Как сать, голос улицы бандит, осталось плясать на пас-класс.
It just keeps kind of going. Trying to remember. There's a song it reminds me of. I just can't remember it's a Yellow Wolf song, and it's not trunk music, but it's something similar to trunk music. Or is it? No, it might be trunk. It is trunk music. It's just not Pop the Trunk. Is trunk music the song, or the trunk music is the album? It reminds me of this, I think. Well, let me switch. Have very similar, like in that, like very, like that deep bassy kind of like nighttime car, or like when you're trying to balance your audio. Because this will tell you if your bass is too high and like your mids and your highs are like need to be pulled up some, so that like, because this has a lot of bass to it, while having those highs and having a baritone, so you can kind of check all three against each other because they're isolated very, very well, right? Like you can very distinctly hear the difference between like the mids and the highs and like the bass. Check the views. I was just listening to it. 28 million views is fucking wild. Oh fuck. Let me hold on, let me DM him real quick.
Стал сам, рифмы писал, дабы ты плясал, гнал, не сал, ни нас не бросал.
This part right here would be really good for testing out your headphones. Like no lie, like, or your speakers.
Сам рифмы писал, дабы ты плясал, гнал, не сал, ни нас не бросал.
Oh god, this would be so good for that. How long does this gotta go? You're talking about this song? This 3-minute song? Like, that's not a fucking long song. Dude, what is up with, like, Americans? And it's nothing against you personally, but, like, what is it about, like, the American music industry that is just, like, the more TikTok and iPad our generation becomes, the more we're like, oh, God, why would you want anything more than 1 minute and 30 seconds of a song? That is something that I've noticed. Like, it's gotten to the point where like Taylor Swift made like a 5 or 6 minute song, and there were literally like Gen Z people that were like, no one could make a song this long. Taylor's breaking records. And it's like, you guys don't even know that the 70s existed. Like, you guys have never heard of Stadium Rock before. That's wild. Like that's crazy. Yeah, she made like a long song, and it's like, yeah, like, you mean like every, like, it used to be mandatory that every fucking band in the 70s, or like rock band, had like a full side of the record album thing. Prog rock? Oh, dude, what's your favorite prog rock? What's your favorite prog rock, Chris? I'm just waiting to get a response from Average Debate Enjoyer. I mean, fucking Rush's 2112 is, that whole album is basically one song. Like, it's split up into other songs, but it's basically just a fucking 25-minute fucking song. It was an over 6-minute song, and I didn't even think about like the length. We were just talking about like what would be our favorite. Which apparently just listening to weird music today on stream until fucking Average Debate Enjoyer. Oh, he said he just did. All right. God damn it. Hello. Mic check. 1 2 1 2.
All good.
And we were talking about Prague. No desire to have anything to do with that. I'm sorry, man. I'm, once you get to like, my age, once you go over 30, if you're still into like e-girls.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, if this somehow enables a slippery slope progression to
either you're a streamer, I just assume you're retarded. And I'm going to be right 99% of the time. Like, it doesn't matter what your political opinions are. Like, if you're a moderately attractive female, you very likely, your political opinions are almost certainly completely useless.
Let's be fair, you can throw moderately attractive out of there and still be right.
Okay, but no, listen, the only attractive person with tits that I've ever seen on Twitch has been, oh God, what's her name? I can't think of her name. Taftash, and she has a penis. It's the only one that I've found, and she's a male. I don't know what to tell you guys. Like, it's the only one.
Blair White can hold her own in a debate too.
She's pretty good. She's pretty decent in a debate. She's a little too passive, more often than not.
Hold her own. That's all.
So we were on Twitter. I don't even remember what it was about. It was about public education somewhere, and I did a little back and forth with you, and I was like, look. If you want to talk about this, let's hop on camera, because I hate typing out long, thought out philosophical arguments and shit on like Twitter threads. Nobody looks at them, right? You start talking, you get like 3 or 4 tweets down, and then we're both just talking to each other with an audience of 0. And it's like some random fanboy will like it, and it'll like each post will have like 2 likes and 14 views. It's just not worth it. It's not worth my time. It's not worth your time. Are you streaming right now?
Yes. Oh, hold on. I am not actually hit start. I'm on Twitch.
Yeah, it's like, let's make sure you're streaming.
Yeah, my bad.
I mean, I don't care. I just trying to figure out what's going on with you.
No, yeah. So I'm looking at it from what I see. The actual disagreement was basically the perverse incentive argument I was making, that when you switch system to another system, a perverse incentive, it might just switch what the incentive is, but those carry over as long as there's human beings involved. But then after that, it was mostly just trying to figure out what your ideal. That's a lot of what this is I don't know your starting premise, and I don't want to straw man it. It takes so much time to go through all these things in detail that like I don't have my starting footing in yet.
Yeah, so like I go into debates with a lot of there's a lot of different types of debates. I don't really consider what this conversation is likely to turn into as a debate. This is far more of a discussion situation. You were like, I'm going to debate this. And I was like, all right, sure. I'm more interested in just having a conversation and figuring out and like explaining my ideas. And then, if you have some pushback, or if there's some ideas that you want to present, like we can go back and forth a little bit on this. But I think of this more as like a Plato's Republic type of debate, which is just a dialectic, a conversation. So the original post, can you link me the original post so I can find it easier?
Yeah. And the debate part was more, I don't think I'm ready in terms, I don't know enough about your true backing of your stances. It's more just picking around the edges. And if I was a dishonest leftist, I would pretend like that's my whole argument and I have the junk for you. And then in reality, it's just some 101 shit you could easily slap around, which is why I don't want to present it in that way. I kind of want to take the 101 shit, throw it at you, see how you respond, and then build my argument off of that.
Why do you got to build an argument? Why aren't you already open to be convinced to the superiority of abolishing public schools in the ANCAP position? Like, what's going on? What do you mean? You don't need to build an argument. Just accept it. I'm gonna spoon feed it to you, and you're gonna go, yes, daddy, that sounds correct.
I want the best spirited, most factual based debate with people that can hold their own in those. That's what I'm here for. I don't take any money. I don't care about any of that shit. That is what I'm online for. And if I can get to your level of understanding of your own worldview to whereas I could represent it as a devil's advocate, I feel like I did my mission in hearing you out and properly.
That would take a long time. And it's not, and I'm not even like it's the same thing is true with like communists, right? And I do think one of the interesting things about trying to understand these ideas is overwhelmingly the people online that are in, especially ones in the debate space, they don't have a coherent ideology. And even if they think that they do, they'll tell you about all these books they read, and it's like, if you dig into almost any of them, like the one that's most famous for this, right, is like Loanerbox, right? I've debated Loanerbox a bunch of times. And like, we'll be on a panel, and then he'll say something, and he'll bring up this obscure book that like gives an argument. And then I'm like, that's like that nobody was expecting, because it's like kind of tangential to the conversation. And then I'll be like, oh, cool. Tell me more about that. Like, what is the meaning behind that? And then he falls apart. And it's like, oh, you didn't read this book. You just pretended you read this book, and you acted like you understood this book. And then you said something that sounded really smart, like because you had this, because you have this big brain that's read all these books. And it's, and then like when you get into the nitty gritty, they don't know what they're talking about. And the problem is that this is super true of libertarians, right? Like libertarians and communists, especially, I think, because to be a libertarian, and to really understand the ideology, like you got to read a lot. And it's the same is true with Marxists, right? Like you can't just read the Communist Manifesto and be like, I get Marxism now, right? Like you got to read Engels, and you got to read. Oh my God, who's calling me? Why is my mother calling me? Hold on 1 second. Let me make sure it's not an emergency. Hey Mom, I'm streaming. What's up?
Said my best.
Anything with sea creatures. Paw Patrol works too. That sounds awesome. I love you, Mom. All right, bye. Sorry about that.
You're all good.
I have a birthday party coming up soon for my son. My mom was like, what kind of cake are we getting? Where was I? Yeah, I was just saying, like
Ingalls and shit, research.
Yeah, well, yeah, you have to read a lot in order to actually adequately represent the ideology. And so what ends up happening is there's a bunch of people communicating. There's a bunch of people pretending to have read a bunch of books, but really all they've read is they've watched some YouTube videos, and like they've like read some Reddit posts about the books that they didn't read, and now they're communicating these ideas to other people. And then so like people's like conception of like the ideology is like third hand accounts, you know what I mean? Like it's like it's so there's so much that's lost in things like this. So I guess, did you send me the tweet, or just send me the tweet so we can get
DM, yeah, and Twitter, Discord DM.
Discord.
So
DMs, okay.
My response to this is kind of like my response to like Charles Murray's argument to what's his name, the dude a comedian he just debated on Joe Rogan, where it's like
I haven't actually seen it because I've been wanting to react with Casimir.
It's interesting, and I think both of them have some good points. Murray doesn't really pick up till the end. The first hour, you're gonna dunk all over him easily, but his argument is that Joe Rogan has all these fringe people on, he doesn't ever have the experts on. And the reason being is because we are spoon-fed that establishment message from birth. I don't need to read anything to know about neoliberalism or New Democrats because it's the mainstream. So like, even though I have done some of that learning to kind of get the backdrop of my arguments down a little better, but yeah, you're on the outside, so I need to do a lot of fucking research to just play catch up.
Yeah. So, well then, if this is in the spirit of Inquisition, ask away. What do you want to know? What is the specific question? Because I can't just give you all of libertarianism in
Libertarian School episode 3 for me, essentially. It's our second one on your podcast, but generally I've been asking you shit on Twitter and in Prime panels and all that shit. So that's kind of like the two. But I more wanted to know what your ideal conception of school was, because that whole perverse incentive argument, that part that I was actually debating, I feel like if you shift the burden from the public to the private, you're going to have a different set of incentives. And one of them is going to be the financial incentive, where you could essentially put out faulty data that would take 30 years to parse out that your school wasn't necessarily training kids properly, or some sort of that's the worst example I could probably think of right now, because you can actually falsify that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like that would be fraud, right? There'd be mechanisms to determine fraud, right? So, so to start at a fundamental level, right? who has incentives
right now?
Hmm?
Right now, you're saying?
Just in general. In any
right now,
system.
it's like teachers unions and just whoever is on
in
the
any
top, I
system that
guess.
could ever exist in reality is people. People have incentives, right? And so many of the arguments of like, oh, well, you know, corporations will have these negative incentives. It's like, obviously, like everyone has incentives, and many people are not like motivated by like good things, right? Many people are motivated by power. People are motivated by control, motivated, you know, especially when you talk about institutions and, you know, positions of power and hierarchies, they're motivated by, you know, narcissistic ideas, things of that nature. And so the question isn't like, will there be markets in a market system of education? Will there be corrupt incentives? The answer is obviously and patently truly yes. The difference is under a monopoly, which is what the state does, right? Like you'll hear socialists talk about how monopolies are bad all the time, but they love the biggest monopoly of all, which is the state. There is very, very little competition under state-run education, right? So the competition that exists is there's kind of pseudo competition in that parents can move, you know, to districts that have better schools. Obviously it's they're all kind of under the same federal regulations. They're under, you know, the Department of Education. They're under, you know, if they're within a state, there's that, you know, and obviously you're going to move for your work. So you're only going to be able to compete with like other things, you know, you're very likely to like, you know, maybe live in 2 or 3 different neighborhoods that might be in different school districts so that you can commute to the job you have. Right. And then there's private education. Well, the problem with private education is that public education is already free. Free with big air quotes, but free. So it's not truly a competition when you're competing against a system that is funded by massive taxes. Right? Like every school-age child, depending upon the school district, it's somewhere between $11,000 to $25,000 a year. It's how much it costs per child. Now, we're not all paying $11,000 to $25,000. You'll hear from the left all the time, oh, it's all property taxes. That also depends on your state, right? In some states, it's like 40% property taxes. In other states, it's like 80% property taxes. There are federal student grants that don't get picked up in that. So there's other forms of taxation that we pay for that pays this massive cost. But a big chunk of it is property taxes. So the way that we pay for public education is with increased rent. That's how you actually pay for your education. It's like when if you own a home in a nice area, obviously the property taxes are pretty big and you kind of see that immediately. But if you're not a homeowner where you're like, well, that's, you know, those property, that's something else. But the thing is that if you have a lot of property taxes and people that are landlords need to make money for a profit, or at the very least to break even on their mortgage, and they're paying property taxes, well, then you're paying for those schools via your property taxes, via increased rent. And so if you have this kind of, so really you have private education that isn't really in competition. It is, but it isn't, because there's this massive incentive structure, which is just send your kids to the public schools. And then the same thing is true of Montessori schools. The same thing is true of homeschooling, right? The people that put their children in private schools, Montessori schools, homeschool are people that are usually financially better off because they can afford to do that despite the fact that they're paying increased rent or property tax. They still have enough money, or they have them enough money to keep a stay-at-home mom for homeschooling or something like that. And they're doing it purely for either ideological or like personal reasons, or because they really, really care and they have access to those resources, because they're competing with what is essentially a cost of zero. It's not free, but they don't get to opt out of those payments. So they're paying it no matter what. So any other type of schooling that's competing with it automatically is incurring an extra cost. And so there isn't really competition. What you really have is you have a monopoly. And so I agree that there are negative incentives in people that might lie, or people that might do fraud, or, a private school that wants to jam pack in as many people, like our current colleges and universities, of where the education's gotten worse and worse, the more they've tried to get more and more people to join, as opposed to selling a quality education. But the difference is that in a competitive market, you can find the bad, like, you run that game long enough, if you're bad at producing a good product or a good service to people, competition will beat you out in some regard. Whereas when you have the power of guns to say, pay your property taxes or you go to jail, right? Or we confiscate your property, like one or the other, right? And then people have compulsory education. So if they can't afford those other things, they must go to these schools. That monopoly means that those negative incentive structures don't have competition to reduce those negative incentive structures. There's not a really, the countervailing kind of thing is mad Karens in school board meetings that change almost nothing unless it becomes a national movement. And even then, it's representative democracy, in the hopes that you elect somebody that will then fix those things, and they'll fix those things by appointing people that you hope will fix those things. You are so many orders of magnitude separated.
I got one more additional point for your argument here as well. So when you see the government enter markets as a form of competition against private firms, oftentimes they run 10 to 30 years behind the markets in terms of innovation because of how slow government gradually does new things. So they often use legal means to compete. So if you look at the history of the post office, for instance, where they started doing price fixing on their competition, so you couldn't price out the post office, despite it being drastically less sufficient because there was a union there. That union lobbied the government to keep their jobs afloat.
Do you know the history? It's very interesting you bring up the post office. So
the whole FedEx thing, the guy that
no, this goes way older. So in America, so anarcho-capitalism obviously comes from Murray S. Rothbard, right? But it is in the vein of the original American anarchists that were like thought leaders in the American anarchist movement, which were the anarcho-individualists. They were far more right-wing private property kind of believers. So the people involved in that would be Voltairine de Cleyre, would be a very minimal name, but predominantly we're talking about three people: Josiah Warren, Lysander Spooner, and Benjamin Tucker. Lysander Spooner, he created a business to compete with the post office. And it started in New York. And what he did was he started going and picking up people's mail for them and delivering it to their home, because originally you had to go to the post office in order to get your mail. And this pissed off the post office and they made it illegal. And then they started, that's when the only time they started doing that was when the market was going to do it. And then people demanded that the market do it because they already had a private thing and the government shut it down. It's just funny that you mentioned that specific example, because that is, Lysander Spooner is like one of the thought leaders that leads into anarcho-capitalism, is the guy that did that with the post office.
Yeah, it carries into today too. They still, to this day, FedEx cannot price compete with the post office despite having cheaper and better service. It's just, they find a way to build up an infrastructure around it. A lot of the times you see this with schools as well, teacher unions. Randy Weingarten's a big, and the COVID vaccine, they made demand after demand after demand, and all the demands got met, and then just a new one would come up. It got to the point where all the students, all the teachers needed to be vaccinated, and we still are going to do remote learning 3 days a week, even after the pandemic's over. It's like, fuck you.
To be fair, there is a reverse end to that, right? Like to straw man or to steel man the liberals, if you will. Which is that, FedEx and UPS also kind of, you could say, abuse if you want to. I don't think it's abuse, but because by law you have to be able to receive packages at your home, a lot of times if you order something through UPS or FedEx and you live in a remote area, they will ship it to your local post office and then have the post office bring it to your house. Right. So there are services that the government does that aren't necessarily profitable, because if the post office didn't exist, you'd have to pay like $40 in shipping because you live on a mountain in the middle of nowhere. The problem is, to argue then against the steel man I just created, right, which is maybe somewhat disingenuous, but I'm not trying to be. The problem is that means that everybody else is subsidizing, the postal, abilities of people that live out in the middle of nowhere. And it's like, why should we have to pay more money, or have, regulations and all these things in place so that people that live out in the middle of nowhere can get cheaper shipping and handling. It's like, dude, your rent is half of what my rent is. Like you chose to live out in the middle of nowhere. It's not my fucking fault that it's more expensive to get goods transferred to your house. But I just want to be fair to like UPS and FedEx. I think there is a pattern where the state doesn't necessarily innovate, but they maintain control over something, and then it gets released to the market, and then the market does it better. But often the state is the one that funded the initial like concept. So I mean, we could see this with NASA, we could see this with the internet, we can see this with things like that.
Yes, but just think of it from the comparative advantage analysis of that. If the post office hadn't been there and UPS had been forced to find a cheaper way, maybe we could have had subcontractors doing that and had some form of like early Uber in the 70s to get these packages out to people. Hire somebody locally to be your courier. And instead of having to give the the post office a ton of money, propping up their extremely expensive system. And
we can go all the way back to Lysander Spooner, which is you live in the middle of fucking nowhere and you have a service that picks your shit up from the post office, right? Like,
exactly.
I go back and forth on this. I don't want to, I don't ever want anything to appear. If I have the opportunity to be as good faith as possible to the ideas, I will, but often debates get into a position where I'm so busy dealing with the other person's bad faith representation that I don't have time to steel man their position. Like it's like I'm already trying to undo the bullshit they're doing, right? So in that conversation, in the spirit of us having a good conversation, I just wanted to bring that up. But yeah, so that is kind of like the argument from efficiency against the concept of like perverse incentives. Is that like, I do agree that individuals are like, there are two ways that you can make money under capitalism, right? Option A is mutual beneficial trade. I give you something and you give me something, and we're both better off for the thing that you gave me. This is how wealth is created, right? I create a product, a good, a service, or I provide capital investment so that we can get the thing now as opposed to later, right? As according to the universal time preference. I provide the land, I provide the labor, whatever it is, I provide, the commodity or the currency that we're using. Is that you want that box of cereal more than you want the price of the box of cereal, the money that you have. And I have set up a system to gain profit because I want your money more than I want this millions of boxes of cereal I have lying around that I produce. So that's option A. And that makes everyone better. And you can never claim that it makes anyone worse. You can claim that the thing that they want might be bad, like let's say porn on your phone, that might have deleterious effects in society, right? But it is based off of the values of the people in that society. And if you want to have a fight about changing the values in society, I'm all for it. But we know without a doubt that whatever it is that you want, you are made better by free market capitalism in that regard. But there's another way to make money under capitalism or under any system of markets and private and property, which is fraud and regulatory capture. That's the other way that you gain money, is that you lie about shit, you aggress upon people, or you use whatever systems of power, whatever institutions of power there are to, hurt the competition in some way. Now, under free market capitalism, eventually you will get found out if that is what you constantly do. If you're constantly doing fraud and you're constantly abusing power, you will incur a long-term cost because people won't trust you. The brand will go down. You will invite people to compete against you because they hate you. Like, you run that game theory long enough, it becomes a problem. But under the state, where the state has a monopoly on power, individuals that want to use fraud, that want to simply gain power, that want to use power that they gain to, price out or regulate out the competition. That is the name of the game of a mixed market economy. Like every company, Apple does this, Netflix does this, Facebook has done this, Twitter has done this, all the big tech companies have done this. The companies, for example, in schools, the big three that, do food distribution for the national the National School Lunch Program, right? They do this. They use fraud and they use power so that they can get regulations, right? And then they engage, and so it's basically impossible for public schools to feed children healthy food because large corporations know that they can get long-term government contracts from schools, and that then they petition the government to have these really, really strict standards on food. And then they create food, mass-produce food that fits these standards that aren't even good or healthy standards, but they're standards that are cheap. And then they produce it at a price that matches the federal reimbursement for the student lunch. Because what they do is they reimburse you based off of meals, and it's like something like, depending on your school district, it's like somewhere between like $2 and $4. Okay, so if you try and feed healthy food from local places, you're going to be spending 2/3 of your own money as opposed to the federal money that is given, for those schools. And so those are the two ways that you can engage in that. And so from a pragmatic perspective, the anarchist is constantly just trying to get rid of those systems that allow for those abuses of power to rent seek, via capitalism, crappy services and fraud and abuses of power. Ultimately, that's kind of the pragmatic approach. We might have a different philosophical reason that we get there, but like that is the human kind of element there that we're looking at. It's like, yeah, I don't want kids eating poison. And the socialist goes, well, we just need more money, or we need more reform. And the true capitalist says, no, just give it to the fucking market and get rid of all of these massive regulations and power that is given to these large corporations that are abusing the system. Because when you create a monopoly, you create the incentive to abuse that monopoly.
So rent seeking in this context, you're using more the classical definition of when you don't add anything tangible to the market, you're more just pushing money around or pushing goods around.
Well, I would yes and no. I'm kind of combining it with corporatism, right? Of like using your power and your money and your influence to buy politicians, so that those politicians can create regulations that price people out of the market, that you're privy to, and that because there's economies of scale, right? And economies of scale is a great thing. We should celebrate economies of scale. People talk all the time. Socialists will talk about, the economies of scale means that unregulated capitalism will always be a giant monopoly. And they always ignore the other half, which is economies of scope, right? There's economies of scale and there's economies of scope. And they always ignore economies of scope. So an example of economies of scale would be Amazon books, right? It's the larger they got, the easier it got for them to price out local bookstores, and they destroyed like most of the Barnes and Nobles and Books A Millions. These big, shopping mall bookstores really lost a lot of power because of Amazon. But what we're starting to see is local bookstores pop up again. And we're like, well, how does that make any fucking sense? Well, it makes sense because people don't like the impersonal aspect of buying a book from Amazon. What they like is they like going to a cute coffee shop and drinking a latte and talking to the weird, quirky girl with a nose ring and like hippie outfit and being like, what kind of books do you like? And then she finds some gem in the rough that you never would have heard of. And then you get to flirt with the fucking quirky girl at the bookstore and sit down, and like, it's a vibe, it's an experience, it's a specific type of thing that you like. And so it's a niche. It caters to a niche audience that Amazon couldn't recreate that. It would be impossible for Amazon to recreate that local bookstore feel. It would be fake. It would be like an uncanny valley of it. And so that's what economies of scope is. And so economies of scale is a good thing, but the problem is that economies of scale has a serious problem once you combine government regulation. And so when you have the ability to mass produce something at a low price, regardless of quality, and usually quality does indeed suffer, you also have the ability to absorb costs, flat costs especially, that small competitors can't. So we see this in like the meat and dairy industry, where a lot of farmers cannot sell their meat at grocery stores. Most farmers can't. These large corporations have put in massive amounts of regulations where they have to pay funds for like inspectors to come in at their own cost. And they loved that because they knew that a local dairy farmer that only had like a couple hundred cows couldn't pay somebody $20,000 to come and inspect their fucking operation. It's just not financially feasible. But some giant Tyson, right, that has that's got millions in profit. What the fuck is 20 grand to have somebody come in once a year and do an inspection? So now these people then have to sell to Tyson or sell to distributors like the big three in schools, and then they take a middleman cut, and then they sell to the grocery stores and things like that. And so this is really bad for competition in the market. It's really bad. It causes inflation because then they can kind of raise the prices up to an artificial level because they created this market manipulation through regulation. And my argument is that this is true of corporations, but it's also true of anything that the government does. And so every time the government is providing a good or a service, these same mechanisms, these same perverse incentive structures play out in the institution itself and in all the ancillary businesses that are associated with schools, like, books or food or, like all of the other things that are attached to that. The downstream effects create perverse incentives.
And again, as the person that's coming into this, it's pro-government schools, I'm going to make a third argument now to add to your point.
All right.
The CHIPS Act, after it was passed, the executive is kind of free to add their own enforcement details. The CHIPS Act is just kind of vague, saying generally this is what you got to spend the money on, do it the way you will. So the way that the Biden administration did it was they put in a daycare requirement to take the CHIPS money. You take our money, you have to put it in a daycare. Even once that CHIPS money runs out, this is now part of your overhead cost. You have to keep it in there to qualify, or we can take you to court, get that money back. So that right there cuts out every firm that's not above X size that can't absorb the overhead costs of that daycare, making it so only the largest companies could now afford to take this money and adhere to the regulations on it. It was literally that exact market capture practice in action, and I pointed it out to people in real time, and they didn't seem to care that he just made the CHIPS Act make the rich richer. And I kind of want to know how you feel about, like, with global free trade, because of the high barrier to entry to import and export goods using shipping and whatnot, only like 1% of companies are able to enter global free trade. So it's not a government barrier, but it's a very large barrier to entry. Would it not be maybe, and I know you don't like government, but like with a practical approach of how government works today, would it not be something you'd maybe want to consider to try to limit that barrier to entry so that more smaller firms can actually compete in free trade?
So if you're limiting the barrier to entry with regulation of some sort, what you're saying is, I want to cause inflation. That's really all you're saying, right? Is you're saying, isn't it bad that these small entrepreneurs can't compete with these big companies that are capable of like offshoring manufacturing or things of that nature? Like, shouldn't we make it easier for them? So what you're really saying is I want to either increase the price by regulating it in some means that makes it easier for those people to get in, or what you're saying is you want some form of subsidy either through regulation or through direct money. So you're asking me, wouldn't it be good if we tax people and we increase prices of goods? And like, no, you know what I mean? Like what I would say is that, there's this concept of free trade that is both good and bad. It's a double-edged sword, which is that for the cheapest prices available of any goods or service, you need global trade because different countries have different resources, including human capital, right? And so it's like, let's look at the video game industry, for example. Let's look at something that isn't tied to the resources in the country, but tied to human capital. When we look at video games, we can look at Diablo 2 when it came out. When Diablo 2 released, it released for $60 US, which is about $130 in today's dollars. Okay? And the scope of the game in terms of how many people worked on the game, there was like less than 200 employees that worked on Diablo 2. All together, there was less than 200 people, and the marketing budget was way, way less. The latest Diablo 4, which is not a good game, but nevertheless, same business, and I'm just trying to create, I'm trying to the best of my ability, compare apples to apples here. It had thousands of employees. Okay, so thousands of employees, and yet the game is the same price. It was like $10 more. I think it was $70 when it released. Okay, so how is it that a game used to be $60 and now it's $70, and they have orders of magnitude of like 100 in terms of the employees working on the game? Part of that is distribution, because you no longer need to distribute physical copies, and the internet allows people to download things. That's a big part of the cost reduction in games. But another part of it is human capital and being able to outsource things. When you look at the studios that developed Diablo 4, what you'll notice is there's a couple of Vietnamese studios that worked on Diablo 4, and they mostly worked on sound effects, because this is a really easy job to offshoot towards a company, because the value of labor of the Canadian and American developers is really high. And so if you can outsource cheaper, like easier to do things that like any monkey developer can do, like sound effects overseas, then that's really, really good for you, because you can reduce the costs, and then your more valuable software developers that are in a country where the hourly wage is much higher on average can focus on the more important aspects of your game. And so the idea that like we need, like there's this weird idea that like MAGA has and people that are like pro-tariff have of like, oh, we need American manufacturing. It's like, no, we fucking don't. Like, we don't want Americans doing those jobs. Like, we just don't. There are certain jobs and certain domestic things that we don't want. And so we have to have global trade. And in order to have global trade, you have to move, but you need a really high rate of profit. It's not about profit per item sold, but a rate of profit, right? I'm explaining this more for the audience than for you on this one. But for example, Walmart makes a retarded amount of money. And a lot of people think that Walmart and Target, like when they were talking about the price of eggs, they were talking about these places price gouging. And it's like, most of people don't realize that when Walmart sells eggs, they make like 2 pennies profit per item sold. Like, if they reduce the price by 2 cents, they would start losing money every single time they sold eggs. The idea that Walmart or Target is price gouging eggs is completely and utterly retarded. It just is. It doesn't match the economics. The reason Walmart is able to make so much fucking money is go walk in any Walmart during a busy time and just look at how many items are sold through self-checkout or through the register in an hour. 2 pennies per every single item in every shopping cart is a lot of fucking money when they're selling 2,000 items. You're right. Like, that's $200 of profit an hour that they're just pumping out. And I mean profit, not revenue, obviously. And so, but if I go to a local camera store to go buy a really nice camera, there might be one person shopping there. They might sell 4 cameras that day. Well, if they're going to keep the lights on, pay the rent, pay an employee to be there, and they're selling 4 cameras, well, they need to make like, a couple $100 in profit that day, which means they need to make like $50 in profit off of like every camera sold, not 2 cents in profit off of every camera sold. And so the cost of shipping something from another country or developing part of something in one country and then moving it over, doing part of the chipset in Germany and then part of it in China and then part of it somewhere else and getting raw resources from somewhere else also that it can be sold somewhere else, is, in order for that to just be viable, you need a rate of profit that's really high, which means you need to be a big company that's doing a lot of sales. And there's just no fucking reason that mom and pop should have the government step in to allow that to happen, because it just means higher prices for everyone.
So, kind of what I was more focusing on specifically there were the export markets. Do you understand? Maybe I didn't go back far enough. Do you understand what Trump's argument behind trade deficits and why he doesn't like them? Do you get what he's trying to drive at there, at least, even if you don't agree with it?
I mean, I don't agree with his. I mean, like, he's doing trade deficit, which I don't get. I don't really quite understand it, because he doesn't. It almost seems like he's ignoring services and software, which is like mostly what we export anyways. Like, many of these countries that we have a presumed, first of all, I don't believe in the concept of a trade deficit anyways, because if I buy something from you when we're both better off, then there's no deficit just because money is going out. Second of all, you don't want too much US dollar stuck in the country, because that's monetary inflation. So that's an increase in price just by having too many dollars in circuit. You want money going out of the country, right? Like that's good. That keeps our currency stable, especially when you have a fiat currency. So like, yeah, no, I don't really get it. Yeah.
His argument essentially is basically you're letting us go into your stores and buy your products, but when it comes to you stepping into our stores and buying our product, you're throwing up a barrier, saying an artificial government enforced trade barrier against our products when you're saying you're our allies. So it's basically a slap in the face to our industry. And so you are right that money is leaving the United States, but they tend to reinvest it. It's the fact that how they're reinvesting it that kind of becomes the problem. It's redistribution upward in a way that, again, only a small percent of these companies can compete. When they do compete, they're the ones that make the profit off of us. Yes, they're selling us cheaper goods, but those people buying the cheaper goods aren't allowed to turn around and sell their cheaper completed products on those global markets again, pre-Amazon. Amazon did help close that gap a little bit, but it's not very much.
But then China created Temu, or not Temu. Yeah. What's the other one? The Chinese version of Amazon. I can't think of the name. It's not Temu. Temu is similar, but
I know what you're talking about. But yeah, so when they reinvest that money, though, they often reinvest it in like buying bonds or buying things that make them more money. That money's not going into the pocket of the U.S. consumer. And you are right. That is
Alibaba.
You're right. That is it. But that money doesn't. So that purchase could go to an American firm. That American firm could make more money, make more American jobs, or it could go to the other firm, which they're also going to scale up jobs. But some of that money is going to go back to the original creator, and how they return and invest it back into our government. Often they invest it into the Federal Reserve by buying bonds, giving them more power over our currency. And I get that you're saying it is necessary with a fiat currency, but the global markets are what empower the Fed to have that power so strongly, in a sense.
Well,
and if we could,
I would say that bonds are the exception to the rule, right? Bonds are basically the only reason that trickle down economics doesn't work. If you were to get rid of bonds, then it would be impossible for trickle down economics to not affect everyday Americans. Like even if that money goes out and then gets reinvested into a firm that exists in America but does a lot of their manufacturing elsewhere, what does that mean? Well, that means one of two things. It means they invest in the business grows, and therefore they hire more employees, and therefore people make more money, or they hire employees overseas so that they can increase production, which means higher supply, which means cheaper prices. So it is impossible for investment of the wealthy. Like, the wealthy cannot hoard wealth. I mean, they can if they're drug dealers, right? And they can stuff it in their walls. But people that do legitimate business, that aren't, drug kingpins, whenever they invest in the stock market or something, that always has a positive impact on the average citizen. The only time that doesn't have a positive impact in the immediacy is when they invested in government bonds, because now the one that is gaining from this is the state. Right, the state is gaining money for investment, and the state isn't a business and it doesn't go bankrupt. So it essentially can't fail so long as it has the guns. So they can continuously rack up more debt, decrease the solvency and the solidity of the U.S. dollar, and invest it in things that don't necessarily make a return on profit or are a waste of money in some capacity in the government. So bonds are the only reason trickle-down economics doesn't work. I agree with you that bonds are a problem in that part of the process. But again, it comes, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but my worldview is an ANCAP, and so most of my things are going to come back to why the government is causing the problem here. But if you get rid of bonds and you only have investment in businesses and loans and banking, then you get something that always 100% of the time, regardless of who that money goes to, is going to be a benefit to the average everyday citizen. I do agree with you that tariffs, and a sneaky tariff that a lot of European countries especially use, which they call the VAT tax, which is they bake tariffs into the VAT tax and then pretend like they don't do tariffs because it's not really a tariff. It's, we had to tax it coming from another country, and because it came from another country, that increased the value of the thing, and it's really just a way for them to do tariffs and pretend like they don't do tariffs. I do agree with you that those things are bad, and if Trump was really dedicated to bullying European countries with tariffs to force them to the table for free trade deals, I'd have a very different opinion on Trump's tariff policy than this idea that he seems to be married to like a 10% tariff no matter what, is very destructive. And also the volatility. I know we've gotten really far away from schools, but I'm just trying to answer your questions and, just have fun with this conversation.
It's fine because, like, I was trying to say this earlier, like, I can emulate a Goldwater conservative, a neocon, paleocon, evangelical, netcon. I just can't emulate a libertarian, and when I try to, it comes out more of like a small government conservative. So yeah. I'm trying to fill a lot of the gaps.
Well, the big difference, there's two big differences, right? One is, obviously we're anarchists, we're against the state, we don't want any regulation. But the other one is you have to understand Austrian economic theory as opposed to maybe like Chicago school, right? Like if you read Thomas Sowell's Basic Economics, that is small, liberty-minded conservative, and it's really good, and I agree with a lot of points in it. And if you read Milton Friedman, which a lot of people would call both these people libertarian, but they're kind of small L libertarian, right? Like you're not really going to get the libertarian view on economics unless you understand praxeology, and a denial of empiricism in making truth claims, not necessarily in using them as pattern recognition. But in making truth claims, that's kind of the big difference, I think, more than the actual philosophy, to most of the time.
And I know you kind of answered this, but I kind of want to hammer down on it because I don't feel like I've gotten the sufficient answer I need to kind of answer what I'm asking. So let me try it from a different perspective. Again, most firms don't have access to free trade, and as a left-wing big government person myself, the two options you suggested of a subsidy or a new tax, absolutely. But there are right-wing ways to counter this as well, which would be maybe the cost of your overseas shipping can be used as a tax reduction on your corporate tax for that year or something like that. Cut another tax as a subsidy, as a tax reduction, as a tax incentive to push some of your markets overseas.
So I'm all for tax reduction, right? The problem with targeted tax reductions is they work in many of the same ways as do targeted tax increases, which is that they unfairly advantage one form of behavior over another form of behavior. And so it's a fancy way of selling to conservatives that don't like taxes. Meanwhile, they're going to keep voting for, higher and higher budgets. And then they're going to sell you a tax reduction as a good thing. And that tax reduction incentivizes behavior. And they go, oh, isn't that good in behavior to incentivize? And it's like, well, no. If you're reducing taxes on, I'll give you a simpler example. And then maybe it kind of like crosses over. The no tax on overtime. As a libertarian, everyone was like, shouldn't you be so excited about like a reduction on taxes and overtime? Isn't that good? Less taxes. And now these people that truly work the hardest in society, they can absolutely get even less taxes. They get more money in their pocket. Isn't this good? And it's like, well, yeah, I appreciate the reduction in taxes, but if you don't reduce spending, then you haven't actually reduced any taxes whatsoever. Okay? Like you can pretend that you've reduced taxes because you got rid of a specific tax, but if you don't reduce spending, then that money comes from somewhere. Either we print money, we sell more bonds, we increase taxes in some other way, we reduce economic transactions so we get closer to Lofner curves, so we're taking more taxes.
Or generate more revenue from growth due to the tax cuts.
That's Lofner curve. That's Lofner curve, right? Which is when you generate more revenue, you end up getting more taxes because there's more economic transactions to tax. So like all of those things, right? And so the problem is that there's an unintended consequence. And I don't actually know for sure that this happens, but I can look at this praxeologically and go, well, what behavior is incentivized? Well, now you're incentivizing overtime work. Okay, well, what does that mean? Well, if I'm doing a really safe job that doesn't have a lot of injuries, that's not really a big deal. But let's say I'm doing construction or let's say I'm doing kitchen work or things where there are workplace accidents. And now people feel like they can't afford their rent, they can't afford their groceries, and there's no taxes on overtime, and they make time and a half on overtime. So they almost feel like if I'm going to survive, I have to work a lot of overtime. If I'm going to get ahead, I have to work a lot of overtime. So you have people that wouldn't necessarily work that overtime that are now being pressured to work overtime. So you almost certainly are going to see more workplace accidents. You're going to see more money having to be paid out in workman's comp, higher insurance ratings because of this. You're going to see more people that are just hurt that then lose out on the ability of the work. And that's just one example of where you've kind of, by getting rid of a tax, you've created people that wouldn't have done a thing to go and do that thing, but not for, right? They would not have gone in and done this much overtime, but not for the fact that those overtime is no longer being taxed. And so what are the unintended consequences of that? Because we're pressuring people to behave in a way that isn't necessarily in their best interest because of the market, but in their best interest because the government has created pressure in that regard. I would say that that same concept applies to tax rebates on engaging in global trade. Is what you're going to get companies that aren't ready to go overseas rushing to go overseas, and you're going to get people going into markets that probably aren't safe or probably aren't good products, or maybe they scrimp on the costs to get a cheaper factory somewhere because they just want to get that rebate and get going because they know they're going to A, get a tax rebate, and B, they're going to get economies of scale, so they're going to be able to up their production. And so you're going to get people making bad investment choices and dangerous choices, engage in things that aren't necessarily the smartest decisions because we've introduced the tax rebate system. And so I think anytime the government starts trying to fuck with the levers of the economy and centrally plan, there's a lot of unintended consequences that occur. And the right answer is just to reduce spending and reduce taxation overall.
Yeah, so more firms will be able to rise themselves up to the barrier.
Right, yeah, because there'll be more growth because they'll be less regulated and less taxed.
So yeah, you agree that it's a problem, but you're saying there's no way a third-party body that's basically run by a public system could step in and make it better without worse consequences.
Yeah, like if you want to understand, like have you read The Road to Serfdom by Hayek?
No, but I can throw it on. I use Blinkist. I drive a lot for work. I'll throw on a book and in like 45 minutes.
That is Hayek might not be the first, but he's the first big name to do it well of the Austrians. So if you're trying to understand libertarian economic theory, there are some things wrong with Hayek, but Hayek comes in, with the marginal revolution, and it is the marginal revolution that allows for Austrian economics to really take off, right? Because Hayek is not the first. I think it might be Menger, it might be someone else that came before Hayek, but it is someone that came before Hayek, but he's the one that popularized the marginal revolution and Austrian economics. And then from there you get Mises, right? Mises is kind of standing on the shoulders of Hayek in a lot of ways. And The Road to Serfdom is probably his most famous work. And I don't want to say it's more normie friendly, but it is, you know what I mean? It's more flowery and speechy and sing-songy, and as opposed to like, and then we do this calculation, there's a lot less math equations in Road to Serfdom,
How do you spell Hayek?
Hayek.
I'll throw that on my list of Blinkist things to check out.
That's Blinkist like a alternative to Amazon.
It's a book report. Somebody reads the book and then breaks it down, each chapter down to like a 5-minute summary for you. It's
like I was talking about in the beginning of the segment, where people haven't actually read the book; they've read other people's opinions on the book.
This is more of like a point by point, like a.
Well, you're not trying to become a libertarian, right? You're just trying to understand it. That's fine. You know what I mean? Like I'm teasing only a little bit.
Yeah. It gives you a general idea. That's all I'm trying to pick up for it. So, there was two other questions I had for you. One goes back to school. The GOP's, minus the fact that the government can kind of use laws to interfere to make their public sector firm more competitive. With that aside, the GOP's charter school plan Is that not something you like right now?
Most libertarians are pro charter school. I am against charter schools. So I'm telling you when I say this that I am in the minority of libertarians here, because I know you're trying to understand libertarianism, right? That is because of the work of people like Deb Philman. The reason we learned, she has me blocked because she went kind of crazy with the October 7th stuff, and she didn't like that I wasn't pro-Israel enough. But I still respect her work regardless of the fact that we had a falling out. And because we used to be actually pretty close, we were like DMing daily and stuff. She's a really sweet lady, and a good thing. But you know, I don't know what to say other than some Jews went a little crazy after October 7th and were like, you're either with me or against me. And I was like, I'm not against you, Deb. I'm just not with the state of Israel. She connected me with a lot of other resources, and I agree with her assessment. And starting philosophically, the problem here is once tax money goes to a service, the rationale becomes that the voter has the right to regulate that. And private schools and homeschooling isn't too regulated. It has regulations, but they're pretty limited regulations. It's a fairly free market. Obviously, it's competing with a heavily subsidized thing, which is public schools. So it's not free in that regard. But in terms of their ability to educate based off of what they like and what they want, it's not too regulated. The moment you have en masse charter schools where you can divert all of the state funding to a private school, you have two major problems that get introduced. Number one, teachers unions, public sector unions, activist organizations, and things like that will be pushing and pushing and pushing for regulation on those. And I think you will see a lot of liberty leave the private school education, and what you'll get is something much closer to like a kind of fascistic system, right? A marriage of the private and public sector for the interest of the children. And I don't want that, right? I want the government as far away from private schools as we can get them, especially when it comes to like, smaller programs like homeschool communities and Montessori schools and things like that, where, smaller scale forms of education, market alternatives, or like the Mormons, right? Where the Mormons will have women working, but the women will get together collectively. And it's like, I have Mondays off, and I tell my job I have Mondays off. And then I take like 7 kids and I teach them. And then another mom does it on Tuesdays and another mom does it on Wednesdays, so that they actually can work 5 days a week and also homeschool their kids in a small environment and socialize them. Which is like, those kids turn out, by the way, leagues better than kids that go to public schools. Those kids that are involved in like community-based, communal, small-scale education systems, like destroy fucking public school education in terms of outcomes. And I want the government not too fucking involved with that. Like, you know what I mean?
Better behave too. Absolutely. I grew up in a very heroin-riddled area. Every single public school kid fucking at least dabbled in something. Every homeschool kid, perfect angels. All of them live great lives now. Like
right.
The amount of love and care you get from that situation, absolutely.
But when it's just a mom just with their kids and they don't put them in sports or anything, that can be problematic. You're not like socializing the children, and it is important for kids to socialize. But the Mormons, as much as I dislike Mormonism for a lot of other reasons, that is something they do very, very well. The second problem is once you start diverting large amounts of state funds into something that can be owned by private corporations, is the moment that all of the other things we were talking about with rent-seeking and corporatism and stuff begin to deeply affect private school education. We've already seen Bill Gates pushing for charter schools. And you're like, what? Bill Gates wants this super conservative thing? And it's because he wants to funnel NGO money and create schools throughout the country that teach all of the woke bullshit that he and that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and all these other activist organizations want, and then have these schools set up that are just a means of getting state money funneled to them. And so it's those two reasons make the chart. Like, I understand the concept of choice and the idea of like, isn't it better if you can choose? But I don't really see a genuine choice here. What I see is a means of the state corrupting what is already a difficult situation in our private education.
That's kind of the two-tier system that I advocate for in most like healthcare, and this is kind of addresses both of that because the private and the public sectors keep themselves in check. But at the end of the day, there's nothing to trump when the public sector makes laws that benefit it over the private sector, and that just tends to be the case that you see when the two have to compete, unfortunately. But I still like the two-tiered system. I think that it's best because there's just some people out there, and I'm sure you've met plenty of them, especially online debating, that you just don't know how they even get their fucking shoes on in the morning. And if you think that they're going to educate their kids on deep sciences to a point where that kid's going to be able to turn around and be a successful scientist, I just don't. There's some people I don't want to school their kids.
I agree that there are definitely going to be members of the community that are too stupid to homeschool. Like, that's just going to be true. The argument is then, well, will they do a better job than public schools? Eventually, you're going to be able to go low enough in the IQ distribution where there are going to be people that are not going to be as successful as public schools. But on average, the median parent is far better equipped to homeschool their child than public schools are in our current state. Maybe not public education in the 1960s, right? Before the Federal Department of Education, before we as a society, introduce, a lot of technologies, before the degradation of a lot of these social systems, before community broke down, because, in the 60s and 50s, parents and communities were involved with their schools and they were working communally together. But that social capital, or that social capital has degraded to where overwhelmingly parents are completely disconnected from whatever's going on at their school. So maybe you could compare it to a better time, but I think that is just the natural progression of statism, is that the more responsibilities the state takes on, the less community we have, the more diversity we have and multiculturalism, the less cultural homogeneity we have, the less people, talk to their neighbors, the less people are involved with the institutions. Robert Putnam made this argument in Bowling Alone. And this was, when the millennials were just kids. He did a deep sociological survey of looking at, what happened to fraternities, what happened to communities, like why are we so broken apart? And some of it was World War II, moving out into the suburbs and working in cities, shopping in suburbs, living in a neighborhood, so the people aren't interconnected. There's a lot of arguments in that book, but he's a lefty, and his approximation is that the lessening of social capital destroys democracy because people are no longer really involved with the institutions. They're just kind of voting on systems that they don't understand, that they're not involved in, and just off-putting responsibility to the state without really thinking about it. They're not connected in any capacity. So like the way democracy worked 50 years ago is not the way it works now. Like, it's an amorphous blob that we have no connection with. I do fear. I don't know. I feel like I said enough there. I just go ahead.
I don't have much of a rebuttal for that in terms of like arguing back. What I do have is a lot of good news on more of like the current front of day-to-day politics. Harvard is currently being sued for basically propping up leftism, propping up they're right now being sued over civil rights. But more importantly is the Montgomery County, Maryland case that just was heard. The oral arguments were heard in front of SCOTUS 2 days ago. Mm-hmm. That is the case that's going to be the parents. Do your parents have a religious right to opt out of certain LGBT teachings that you might not be friendly of? And if the ruling extends past just the religious exemption to, yes, all parents actually have this right, I can see that pendulum of the government's power over, like, how are you going to have a public sector school that's run by the government, that's by the people, for the people, then tell the people, no, sorry, you don't have a fucking input. We hired experts and we're going to listen to them now. It's just such a contradictory view of the democracy that my personal side of the aisle pretends to represent most of the time. Like,
I think
yeah,
the
you have
big
democracy to elect us to tell us what tell you what to do.
The problem is that we have obviously we have the 9th and 10th Amendment of the Constitution. And so there's some wiggle room with the 9th and 10th Amendment of the Constitution, but there is no enshrined parental rights in the Constitution. And that's a huge, huge problem, because philosophically, no one really seems to have an understanding of what parental rights are, what the limits of those rights are. And so what you really have is you have two systems of opposing values. And because there's no enshrined extant right that anyone has recognized in parental education. And so the right has a value in parental rights over the community or the state's rights involvement of the child, right? Whereas the left has the exact opposite. The left believes that a child, that the state has this responsibility and duty to ensure that a child's basic needs and well-being are taken care of, and the right has, and they're pushing that more and more and more, that a child isn't actually your child, but that it's a separate entity that's on rent or on lease to you. Whereas the right has a value that I would say actually kind of exceeds the libertarian position, which is that like parents almost own their children. Libertarians' answer to this is, the best way to look at it is, imagine you die, or imagine your grandfather dies, right? And then he has a last will and testament, right? So last will and testament says, this is what property goes to my son, this property goes to my daughter, this property goes to my wife, I want this percentage of my assets to go to this charity, etc. Okay? Now, the way that we kind of view it from the libertarian perspective is, imagine if it took 18 years to translate that document. You are the arbiter of that last will and testament of a child. You are the guardian. And it is up to you. When a child is born, they have zero capacity to consent to anything. And as they get older, you begin to understand and read that last will and testament a little better, right? Letters start to come together, individual sentences start to get translated, but it's not until they're fully adult that you have the full context of everything. And so you give them a degree of individuality as they age, but ultimately you are the guardian of that child. You are the first, when you birth a child, you're the first person in the world to kind of pick up that contract with that child to agree to be their guardian. You good?
Yeah, I gotta take my dogs out real quick. They're acting up. I just wanted to let you know that two people in my chat said they're loving the conversation.
Well, those two people are gonna leave now. That you gotta go walk your dog.
No, I just gotta pop them out back. I got a fence.
Oh, okay, all right, cool. Hell yeah. Look at this wealthy man. He's living the high life. If you guys have any questions, in my chat, remember, you can always super chat me, and I will always answer super chats. If you at me, and chat is slow or something, I might pick it out, given the conversation, but it's not guaranteed that I always see it. Trump will trumpet. The Bill and Melinda Gates Island School of You Better Keep Your Mouth Shut. Jesus Christ. Oh, God. Oh, fuck. The Bill and Melinda Gates Flight School. Once you can get off of the island. Bill and Melinda Gates Flight School. Once you're, we teach you flight, and then once you're capable of flying the plane off of the island, you're too old for the island.
Barack and Michelle's boating school is opening up, too.
Michelle's boating school. Dude, I love how that happened, and then we all kind of just, like, collectively forgot that, like, their cook was definitely murdered. Everyone was just like, whatever. I mean, it was shallow water, and this dude who's an avid swimmer clearly drowned. I mean, he is a chef, and mommy always told me not to, to wait 30 minutes after eating before you get in the water. So that must be what happened to him.
So, oh fuck, I was gonna go one place with what you were just. Oh yeah, school. What you were describing schools between the left and the right, I think the liberal approach. I'll explain this. I think most of our country is liberal, and we're just arguing over two versions of liberalism. I feel like the majority of the GOP is just defective left-wingers who just every time the left moves more left, they kind of go to the right. And now you have like neocons and shit like that. Neocons were like disaffective left-wingers around the Reagan times and shit. Like, they were like Reaganite Democrats that eventually just kind of moved over. So things to that nature, where I don't think the GOP really represents like the paleocon version of conservatism anymore, and Trump bringing in the NatCon version of conservatism. Blah. Anyways, that's a whole different thing I can go down. But the point here I was trying to make is more for the liberal version of schools, we just want people to be able to put a bunch of money into a building where the kids are safe, where you can hire professionals to teach them the best version, professionals that are best with handling kids and know enough about the particular subject. And in reality, like the system that you were just talking about with parents doing what they were doing, that kind of is that without the specialists. And in a way, that's really cool that you're almost going back to the original liberal ideas of a school, where it's like a community coming together, getting, when it's convenient for everybody, getting a professional in there to go and watch the kids and teach them that day. I just feel like on the next level, you could actually get somebody like that went to school for 4 years for biology to teach, fifth graders biology. That's where I wanted schools to stop. And it feel like the right wing pumped in religion, the left wing pumped in gender.
Yeah, I was like, I had a unique school experience. I had a pretty rough custody battle with my parents, and like, so my mother and people, they put a lot of crazy shit in my record, and teachers would get these packets, about me that I didn't even know about until I was like an adult, right? That said that I had all these problems that like I didn't really have, like I was not really like that big of a deal. And so then they brought in like, people to like test my IQ and test me for a bunch of different shit. And, go over, like I had to like go see a psychotherapist and all this other random shit. And I didn't know what was going on. I was a little kid. And then eventually like in elementary school, like they kind of like had this compromise, which was my grandmother is a professor of sociology. She's actually a critical theorist, hilariously enough. And like started most of the domestic violence shelters in the state of Virginia. And
that's nice though. That's cool.
Yeah, no, she's a hero in a lot of ways, and we argue in a lot of ways, most like her thesis and most of her stuff was on the satanic panic and like satanic cults and rituals and shit. It was fun. I read a bunch of her work, as I got older, and was like, oh, this is interesting, Grandma. She's like, ew, you read that? And I'm like, yeah. So the compromise was, well, my grandma would just buy me textbooks. And then I was allowed to read whatever I wanted to read and just kind of ignore what was going on in school. So like I educated myself in public schools in elementary school. Like I would just read like history books and math textbooks and stuff. Cause I was they wanted me to go to, the first compromise was like, hey, you're in second grade. They were like, can you just go to fifth grade or sixth grade? And then they were like, and then maybe he won't have so many problems. Cause I was a little bit of an asshole, but I was just bored. And like I was helping my mom learn calculus in like elementary school. And I'm terrible at calculus now. I don't fucking know how I was doing it then because I'm bad at math now. But I guess she was in community college, so I guess it was really easy. But like, yeah. And then in middle school, I basically had a legal run-in where I accidentally brought a can of lighter fluid to school. I say accidentally because I was at my friend's house stoned and I put it in the wrong backpack. And I needed him to buy lighter fluid because at the time, I wasn't old enough to be able to, buy lighter fluid for my lighter so I could continue smoking weed. And so like I brought it to school and then some kids saw it because I was like, what is this? And because I'd forgotten about it. It'd been in my backpack for like 4 days in school. And I opened it up and I'm like, oh shit. The cops came in, they arrested me. They like interrogated me without my parents for like several hours. They thought I was like a domestic terrorist or some shit. Like asked me all kinds of crazy questions. Teacher quit because like there was rumors going around that I was trying to kill my teacher. It was insane. It was literally just, I was a stoner that brought a fucking can of lighter fluid to school by accident because I was high. That's the whole story. I ended up doing a whole year in school suspension, and it was the greatest year of my education because I didn't have to sit in fucking class. I could just get all my homework done and read what I needed to read, and then like the second half of the day just read like books and fuck off because I was already done all my work and done my schooling and stuff. with the exception of chorus class. I would leave to go to chorus because my chorus teacher wanted me. And so like I had this really weird experience with school, which is I kind of saw from a very, very young age how completely dumb the entire thing is, and how none of these teachers are authority figures. They're just other regular dumb adults. And most of them are pretty bad at their job, and most of them don't even really understand the subject that they're teaching. And so I guess like schooling in general has a near and dear place in my heart of hate. You know, like I have like a special little kernel of hate because I was so fucked over by school. Because I was a poor kid, you know what I mean? Like if I'd been a rich kid, I would have probably had all these cool opportunities and different things and tutors and, you know, gone to college early and shit like that. But because I was a poor kid and in school, I just kind of like sat there reading like I was reading, like, I remember one, it was like, I was in history class reading, not Magicians of the Gods, but, Fingerprints of the Gods, the first book that came out from that British guy that talks about like Göbekli Tepe and Gunung Padang, and I can't remember his name. That he's been on Joe Rogan a couple times. You know what I'm talking about? He had a Netflix series.
Oh, vaguely. I've seen his name. That's about it.
Yeah, but I was reading his first book in like an American history class, and they were like, "You need to pay attention." And I was just like, dude, I could teach this class. Like, this is stupid. Like it's just, I had a horrible experience. It was terrible. And it's just like, I guess sometimes when I see the failures of education and how many kids come out not being able to read, and the way that we're constantly lowering standards towards those kids, while simultaneously the corrupt incentive structures of teachers unions and, you know, oh, we just need more money, and everything constantly pushes the educational standards down. I kind of just sit there and go, how many fucking children like me exist in that system, right? Like how many kids are smart kids that, you know, maybe have some problems because they're not in great circumstances in their life, that are just being churned up by this machine that is designed to create competent workers and is even failing at doing that. And it's just like something has to change, even if you're not willing to come to the table with me as like an ANCAP that's like burn it all down. Like we've got to, like, this is, we need more than small changes.
Yeah. So, I think if you went to a liberal inner city school where I grew up, you probably wouldn't have had that much of an experience, because the same thing that happened to you, minus the terrorist part at the end, happened to my buddy, but with almost a pound of weed, and he was back in school within like 6 months. Like, the drug dogs came in, he got interrogated by a federal DEA officer, trying to get his connection for how he got that much weed at that age and shit.
That is wild. Having a pound of weed as a young kid that's work.
That's crazy stuff. Yeah, but like
that's moving. You know what I mean? Like that kid is very, very quickly about to start selling either hallucinogens because they're that kind of kid, or starting to sell coke and heroin.
He's one of the few that's still alive, but he got really bad into heroin for years. He went to rehab 3 times, been to jail several times, robbing cars in the city. Everyone knew who he was, stay away from him and shit. Now he's better. I actually went up to New York for my dad's funeral, hung out with him a lot. But that's 25 years ago.
Isn't it? I know this is really getting away from the conversation, and the debate title makes no fucking sense, but whatever. Isn't it crazy how, I wonder if you have the same feeling when you see all of like these lefties talk about poverty and like poor communities and all of these things, as someone that grew up around that actual shit, and like just the almost dark comedy, the macabre kind of like lens of viewing these silver spoon socialists. It's like, dude, you don't know any of these people. You don't understand any of this shit. You don't understand how these people, like, you're so disconnected. Not you, I mean like us looking at them, and it's just like I know so many people that are dead now, you know, like that didn't make it. And it's like, you don't really get that from, I mean, you do get that to a certain extent, but like the suburban wealthy people that become commies, it's like, you can tell that they're like chasing this idea of like oppression because they never had any in their real life. And I don't know, there's just something about like their lack of understanding that is just always so interesting to me.
I find it to be like a light form of survivor's guilt. But I want to actually say something nice about these liberal schools. So you do get that Democrat indoctrination from those liberal schools in these liberal blue states, but they also pay their teachers really well. So I had really good teachers. My chemistry teacher in 11th grade was so good at his job and so on it and so like active and great. Like he made me want to be a chemist for a couple of years. I quit school and sold drugs, but I wanted to be a chemist for a couple of years because
well,
he
you
was
kind
so
of
good.
were.
Yeah,
a little bit
in a way.
You know what I mean? You knew the metric system very well, and that's all that was necessary, okay?
But like he was so good at his job, he inspired people to go down that route. And like the girl that was valedictorian of my year that I would have graduated became a chemist because of him. He was fantastic. And like I was a bad kid from a broken home. I was poor, I was distracted, I was a class clown, I was an asshole. And they still caught me and realized that there was something there. And by 11th grade, I was taking college level classes because they realized that I wasn't being challenged by school, not that I was just insubordinate. And like I didn't even realize it. I didn't even know that until I was older. Like, holy shit, they actually saw it. But like these actual, like when you dump the funding in and you keep it liberal and not leftist, there were actual good things that I could say that they caught that other people wouldn't have.
I mean, I would say that's in spite of it, right? I would say that there are good teachers that care, and that there is a certain level of stress when you deal with problem communities, that you probably don't stay there long unless you kind of care to a certain degree, and that level of care can overcome a lot, right? If you genuinely care. I would say there is an element of cherry picking, or I guess nut picking is the appropriate term, that you see with like, libs at TikTok and things like that, trying to find crazy teachers. They do exist. They are a portion, but there's several things going on here. One, yeah, in really problematic areas, sometimes you get that. Sometimes you don't. You get a lot of people that are jaded in those places too, that do terrible things to kids and hate kids. You get a lot of teachers now that apparently molest them for some reason. I don't know why that's coming out of the woodwork in higher and higher degrees, but that's happening. But also, there's also institutional power of activist organizations that utilize this monopoly on education. And, when you talk about wokeism and leftism, the thing that I hate more than communists, more than liberals, more than anybody is the way the conversation occurs with right-wing grifters, because they love to find some blue-haired crazy freak talking about how they want to talk about their penis to kids to try and shock people because it gets them money. But nobody's talking about second step. Nobody's talking about social emotional learning and transformative social emotional learning, and the fact that there are activist organizations that want to push queer theory onto children that are now in 1/3 of all elementary schools in all of America, private schools included. There is massive institutional power from academic organizations that have worked with the Department of Education, very much similar to the way USAID is operated, where NGOs have utilized our state money to push some of the worst destructive ideas into education. And the thing that we kind of see is we see the crazy wokies, and we see, what is that? The new math. I can't think of the name of the new math right now. Common Core math and stuff. Like we see stuff like that, and which, by the way, Common Core math is actually really good for kids with high IQ. It's terrible. Like I have a little bit of a bone to pick. Common Core math, when you look at the studies on Common Core math, it looks good. And the reason it looks good is anytime you have an intervention that works well for high IQ, it completely destroys the median. Because the high IQ kids do really, really well with Common Core, and then the dumb kids don't do as well, and then the average goes up because you're looking at test scores where like the high IQ kids are doubling or tripling their scores, or they're really getting like something like 40% increase or whatever. But Common Core actually teaches you how to think about math as opposed to just doing algorithms. So I don't have a big problem with Common Core, but mandated Common Core has destroyed kids' understanding of being able to do math, because let's be honest, most kids aren't high IQ. If they were, then we would have to shift. We'd have a Flynn effect. We'd have to shift what meant high IQ. But yeah, like we're not talking about all these other institutional issues. And so I don't disagree that there are good teachers out there, and that there are hardworking people, especially like young men, male teachers that go into problem areas that really want to help out. But you just, it pales in comparison to the problem of public education and the incentives that public education creates, and the way that activist organizations, NGOs, corporations that make textbooks, corporations that distribute food, and all of these other power players that are trying to gain money, power, or influence in what is a state granted monopoly. And I just hate how much the left, it's almost like the communists, in a lot of ways, communists get things that the liberals don't get, right? Which is that they constantly talk about how monopolies are bad and understand how monopolies cause all these problems. And then they are constantly ignoring government-run monopolies because democracy is somehow this magical thing that stops all of the problems that monopolies have.
Yeah. And so I'm not trying to argue. I wanted to throw out a point here. Fuck, where was I going to start this? Because all I got is a bunch of damn talking points I wrote down while I'm trying to listen and talk at the same time. So, 1/3 of you were talking about what 1/3 of school. I'll go to that first. Yeah, 1/3 of schools you were saying have some sort of DEI or socioeconomic learning in there, some sort of
social emotional learning.
Yeah, advanced
which
SEL is bad. Original SEL, I've looked into that argument. Originally, it was meant for more of a liberal good, more akin to like what a Pell Grant would be, and then it got co-opted by gender people. That's
so social emotional learning starts in. It's meant to be done originally by guidance counselors, people that have counseling degrees, okay? Because it is a psychological intervention. It's a psychological intervention for oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder. Now, conduct disorder and CD and ODD are basically, they're kind of like catch-alls, like acute traumatic stress disorder. It's a catch-all for like the fact that it's difficult to diagnose children. Because they're still developing and their personality is still developing, their brain's still developing. So like you can't give a kid a personality disorder. You can't say, oh, this kid has narcissistic personality disorder. It's like they're 10, dude. Like development might have been stunted in one domain. They might have trauma. We don't really know. So we give out things like ODD and CD, which basically just means bad kids. It's a fucked up, but it's true. It's what it means. And so the concept of social emotional learning as an intervention guided by psychotherapists is to help kids, connect and empathize with other children and then connect that with their education so that we can kind of catch up kids that have a problem with empathy, the whole mirror neuron thing kind of, right? And catch them up so that they can kind of fit back into a school system without being a problem. Then it got immediate. But the moment it started going towards teachers was the moment that they started saying that teachers were going to en masse teach children empathy and we're going to engage in psychological interventions on your children. And that's a real big problem, right?
Yeah.
And then very, so social emotional learning on its face isn't as pernicious or evil until you begin to look into the companies that support and fund it, like Casel and things like that, or especially positions like Second Step. One of their slogans is, oh God, I can't remember their slogan. It's like Second Step hosted an event, just so you can understand where these people are at. Sumi Cho, Ibram X. Kendi, and Kimberly Crenshaw, where they admitted that critical race theory was in schools and that social emotional learning was a medium by which they could push more critical race theory and critical theory and queer theory to children through educational programs. And these guys write the sex education standards for like the state of California and a couple other states. These people have a lot of power and a lot of influence. Second Step.
I did about 3 years ago a deep rabbit hole in the James Lindsay, so I know vaguely what you're talking about, just not
right.
the detail level.
Right,
But
and
yeah,
so
heard
like
it.
social emotional learning on its face seems good, and not all programs are created equal, right? There are SEL programs that really are kind of like the original concept, which is just teaching empathy to kids. And then there are programs that take it to another extreme, which isn't just teaching queer theory. They do things where they go, we need to get you into the quote unquote discomfort zone, into the learning zone. And the way that they do that is they force children to talk about their privilege in elementary school, and then embarrass them in front of in front of all of the other children for their privilege or for their minority status, so that we can all empathize with their position, so we can move to a place of learning. And that place of learning is only achieved after we've taken second graders and given them a Maoist struggle session, right? And another one that they do is they give tests to children, and then teachers' performance reviews are based off of their ability to change their test scores from the beginning of the year to the end of the review year. And these tests are specifically targeting how empathetic and how collectivist the children are. And it is the goal of the educational system to try and focus on children that are too individualist and don't have enough empathy for other people's struggles and problems, and force them to become more collectivist, and engage in what is known as a critical democracy. Like, this shit is way more evil than a random chick with blue hair on the internet.
And then you have the book saying like whiteness is a deal with the devil in elementary schools and shit, backing that up.
Oh yeah, I don't really, I hate getting into that shit. Like, I have to for panels, but it's like the real fight is not fucking Loudoun County having weird porn in their library. Like, that is the fight that is salacious. So it's the fight that people pay attention to, but it is not the real problem. The real problem is the existence of the Federal Department of Education, the existence of NGOs and activist organizations being able to funnel state funds into a monopoly.
It's a proxy word to get the normie to wake up the what's the word I'm looking for? The sleeping giant of the reactionary non-voter or whatever. The reactionary monster. It's a proxy battle between the intellectuals to hollow it down to this single thing that the dumb people can get in on too. And a lot of Loudoun County was the transgender student that abused two girls in the bathroom. But the point I wanted to get to here is more like...
Yeah, but Loudoun County also was where they had Lawn Boy or whatever, that book about like where it was like the engorged penis in the child's hand talking to the pastor. And then they got rid of the book, and then they secretly snuck the book back in because children need this book. They need this pedophilia book in their library so that they can learn what it's like in middle school to, grab the priest's dick and feel, his gay swelling.
Well, you'll notice that the reason that hit and the reason why a lot of these stories hit is there's an election coming up. That was when the governor's election in Virginia was taking place. And
I'm in Virginia.
When there's,
I'm in Virginia. So New Jersey and Virginia have off-year elections. So a lot of times we end up getting national attention on our gubernatorial races because our gubernatorial races occur when there is no election for federal government.
So that's why you see particular stories popping up sometimes in the way and the time that they do. But what I want to get to is like 1/3 of schools have this in there. So that would suggest that 1/3 of parents want that to be taught to their kids. And I don't argue on Facebook anymore. That's exactly why I made this Twitter account, to argue politics with people that actually want to. But if I go through I used to live in Dallas, and a lot of people I know take their kid to pride parades. I've seen pictures of like drag queen story time. They're taking their kids to it. Like dozens of people I've known and worked with and shit like that. The fact that Trump is now able to use Title VI and Title IX to go against a lot of the anti-Semitism stuff and a lot of the trans stuff we saw, and then use federal funds to almost coerce them into that more 70 or 80-20 issue that aligns with what the public actually wants. In a way, that's the mechanisms and levers of government pushing people back towards sanity, and it kind of is a way to win the battle too.
The problem here is that politics is downstream of culture and culture is downstream of philosophy. And once you understand that Paulo Freire and his book Pedagogy of the Oppressed that has over 200,000 citations. Once you understand that Paulo Freire is the number one cited social scientist in academia in America, and you understand that the left steals shit constantly, so someone will cite Paulo Freire, and then someone will cite the guy who cited Paulo Freire without actually citing Paulo Freire, right? Is that you can like, we've already moved on. Social emotional learning is already old news. It's things like Portrait of a Graduate. Like, the problem is that Republicans are going to, like, the idea of using policy is the idea of playing a game of whack-a-mole, right? Where, like, you go after, like, if you're not attacking the philosophy and you're not getting rid of the corrupt incentives, and the corrupt incentive that I'm predominantly arguing here is the existence of public schools, as opposed to letting everybody's rent drop and nobody has to pay the rent prices they're paying, and the housing prices go down because property taxes plummet, and other forms of taxation, and instead letting mothers stop working and taking care of their kids, and letting, Montessori schools pop up, and letting community schooling pop up, and letting, private schools thrive, and letting kids eat healthy food that increases their learning, letting the market actually step in, while you have this corrupt incentive structure and you have a pernicious ideology of kind of, like, you can call it wokeism, you can call it critical theory in multiple domains, following the Frankfurt School's classification in neo-Marxism from Antonio Gramsci's prison papers, and realizing that, Marxism can't be just about class. Call it whatever the fuck you want, but we all know the beast we're talking about.
Neo-Marxism's fine.
Yeah, neo-Marxism's fine. I talk to some commies from time to time, and they get mad at that term, but it's fine.
Fuck them.
Fuck them. Yeah. No, I like talking to commies because I think most libertarians don't understand the difference between liberals and commies in a good way. So it's good for me to talk to commies. It actually highlights the differences and lets them see both enemies better. But yeah, Trump using Title IX and using federal funds and things like that it's a drop in the bucket, and two, it's a game of whack-a-mole, right? Like, the real problem with Harvard and the real problem with private school and public school is that federal student loans, the fact that the government guarantees loans, allows people to get all of these trash fucking degrees, and allows these administrations to, these schools to constantly engage in administrative bloat. Like, if we got rid of the federal student loan program and it was only private loans, parents wouldn't co-sign loans for their kid to go get a gender studies degree. Like, it just wouldn't happen. Okay, you would have a renaissance of people getting useful degrees again. Like, we have a epidemic of, especially women, going and getting useless humanities degrees and then getting a DEI email or HR job at a corporation that is just layers of middle management that cripples the company's ability to do anything, whilst making the workplace a feminine environment that funnels wealth to women that don't provide anything to the economy other than them bitching and making the workplace more friendly to the women that are being brought in. And it's a chicken and egg scenario. Like, get rid of all of that shit, and what you will find is you will find a lot more people going to getting degrees in engineering, a lot more people wanting to getting medical degrees, right? In specialized medical degrees like x-ray tech and, dental tech and shit like that. A lot more people getting trade school degrees, a lot more people getting degrees that are actually useful to the growth of our economy. And you'll see a lot of women dropping out of going to college to get some psych degree and realizing that it's better that they marry one of these dudes that got a fucking engineering degree and stay home and raise their kids and homeschool their kids and give them a real education. Like, you can't use the power of the state to fix problems that are created by the incentive structure of the monopoly of the state as the state keeps growing, and then say that you're fixing it. Meanwhile, Republicans are passing spending bills that increase spending. It's clown world, and Trump is just as much a part of clown world as fucking any of these other Democrats.
There is an argument that Trump and Vance are both more of a European-style right-wing that is more of a bigger government right-wing. So I can see why you're not a big fan of that at all, definitely. But in a way, it would create other problems, but you could say, like, hey, we're only going to give student loans to skill sets that are marketable for what our economy is going to either be or going to look like hypothetically in the next 5 or 10 years based on the rate our investments.
How do you essentially plan that? How do you essentially plan that?
Because as soon as you do that, then you get someone like Joe Biden stepping in and saying, hey, we're going to end the use of fossil fuels in 12 years. So I think that we're not going to hand out
we need
any
green
more degrees.
energy. Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
And then
So-
Virginia Tech closes as a school, one Asian kid shooting up the school couldn't do the damage that Joe Biden would do when he comes in and says that, this, petroleum engineering degree has to go away or is no longer getting funded, but the other ones are going to get funded. Like, the one thing I will say that I'm very excited about with Trump and Vance and especially Elon Musk is Doge. And it's not because I think Doge is actually going to cut government spending in any meaningful way, especially not in comparison to the spending increases. But what I love about it is the amount of normies it's waking up to just how crazy government spending is and the way in which it's spent. Because I think these arguments that I'm making about the corrupt incentive structure of activist organizations, NGOs, wasteful government, the inability of the government to spend things efficiently, 2 years ago, these were really hard arguments for me to make to the right. They were like, you're crazy. Of course we need these public schools. Of course we need these things. And then all of a sudden, Elon Musk goes on Twitter and on TV and says, hey guys, we can't fire government employees because the records are kept in a mine and they're kept on paper, and the speed at which we fire government employees is bottlenecked by the speed of the fucking mine carts leaving the mine. And people are like, you're joking. Like, this is clearly a troll, right? And we're like, no, this is real. And all of a sudden, me being like, hey, the government is super retarded and inefficient and does terrible things and is very easily corrupted. And then they're like, ooh, I don't know. It kind of makes sense. And then Elon Musk comes out and says, hey, guys, did you know that there are double the amount of government credit cards than there are government employees? And then you make this argument again, and all of a sudden people are like, you know what? Maybe we do need to get rid of the Federal Department of Education. Like, education standards and outcomes have done nothing but fall since its inception. Maybe you're not that crazy, So that is the one beautiful thing that I like about Trump coming in, because he's the first president to actually attempt to play whack-a-mole. And as he plays that game, a lot of the craziness of what has been going on becomes public knowledge. And then watching Democrats and, rogue judges and activist organizations that engage in lawfare do everything to be like, how dare you try and stop U.S. aid money? We need this, $500 million for condoms in Uganda, in Mozambique that haven't reduced aid significantly the entire time that they've been there, but we may or may not be skimming money off of the top, right? Like, I think those, like the left's reaction to being married to corporations and government corruption, and the Doge and them playing whack-a-mole and doing that is exposing a lot. And so, like, that I really love about the Trump administration. Like, I just love that, because I think there's a big avenue for people to find libertarianism, because all of a sudden I don't sound so crazy when I say that the government needs to be out of all of this shit.
Yeah, then you really probably aren't going to like JD Vance. So the kind of the point I'm seeing from big
I don't like
government
JD
versus
Vance.
you're not going to like his ideology. Peter Thiel and all that.
He's a fascist. He's a fascist.
Yeah, he wants big government right-wingism, basically, But yeah, so the point of big government versus big government is kind of similar to what you see when presidents come in and pass EOs, knowing that in 4 years, or 8 years, the next guy's just going to come in and reverse them. The same thing as jamming policy down that could be reversed in budget reconciliation when the new administration or new House and Senate takes in whatever. So the reason for that is because you're somewhat then putting the issue into the hands of voters. Is it going to be popular for the next Democrat to come in and overturn all of Trump's changes to civil rights with Jews and overturn all of Trump's changes with transgender people, when both of those are 80-20 issues in Trump's favor? Like, people like those changes. So
yeah, the problem is we have so many layers of bureaucracy that all of these unpopular opinions were instituted over time, and nobody knew that they were instituted. So why would it be any different, right? Like, the problem is that if you have a media and a Hollywood and most of the bureaucratic state that are all ideologically, left-leaning, neoliberals. And then we create a 3,000 page bill. And then there's a paragraph to, create a committee to institute regulations on a thing. And it's given vague power. And then that new committee somewhere uses that vague power to reinstitute the very things that Donald Trump got rid of, and nobody in the mainstream news media does it. And it's only a couple of crazy and all the right-wing grifters are only following the headlines anyways, because they only care about their fame and popularity. They don't give a fuck about actually doing any real journalism. Then all of these things will come back. I mean, the greatest example I can give is CISA, right? Cyber Information Security Act, like, so whatever it is, social, you know what I'm talking about, right? It's a 2019 bill, and the Twitter files showcase that Donald Trump signed in CISA. He signed the act that gave the government all of the power to and the incentive to silence the Hunter Biden laptop story, to engage in massive censorship over COVID, to have this very vague and undefined power to censor, Americans and violate the freedom of speech. And nobody's gone to jail. No one's been to prison. No one's been convicted. Okay. Donald Trump is president. Fucking Clapper. I can't remember his fucking name. The
former CIA head under Obama.
No, the director of the National Security Administration went to Congress, lied to Congress, said that we were not engaging in tracking anybody's information or collecting any metadata from Americans unless it was by a warrant. And then, but he said not wittingly, right? Was the direct quote. Well, he's been working up until a year ago for CNN, getting paid six figures by CNN as one of dozens of, intelligence community assets for CNN. Right. And he never went to jail. Trump never put him in jail. Obama didn't put him in jail. Biden didn't put him in jail. Right. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that the head of the NSA lied to the American public, violated our First Amendment rights, did all of these horrible, evil things. And then they have a deal where they funnel information to CNN so that CNN can be the government propaganda arm of the state and of the intelligence community. There's a fucking reason that that Donald Trump was only called, quote, presidential once in his entire first term and going on in his second term of his presidency, and that was when he was bombing an airfield in Syria. All of a sudden, Donald Trump looks so presidential. He looks so presidential for the first time. And they all regurgitated it. Why? Because they get money from the fucking CIA to be the political propaganda arm of the intelligence community and to push all the shit that we want. So, and it was fucking Tucker Carlson that saved us from going to war with Iran, weirdly enough, right? So the idea that he's going to come in and play whack-a-mole, that he's not going to get rid of any of the actual incentives, that the budget's going to increase, but we're going to fix this problem by using Title IX or something is really just and I'm not trying to insult you. I'm just saying, in general, it is a completely naive view of power and of the way the state and corporations and activist organizations work together, and especially intelligence agencies.
I think, everything you named kind of plays into my point, because all of those apparatuses, the CIA was doing all that behind the scenes in the United States to push this on us from the top down, from academia, through the media, and somehow, even with all that resistance trying to push this trans movement, it's still an 80-20, 79 to 18% issue that parents don't want men in dresses in women's locker rooms, in women's sports, in women's bathrooms.
For sure. But the institutions are captured. Who's talking about NQTEL? Who's talking about NQTEL? Do you know what NQTEL is?
I don't.
NQTEL is a private equity firm that is under the direction of the CIA. The CIA has an equity firm. They invested in Metabiota, and they invested in Black & Vetch and the construction of the level 4 biolabs on the border of Ukraine and Russia. They've done a bunch of other cool, fun things like that. Okay, but nobody's talking about them. You know why nobody's talking about them? Because that's not what large account right-wing grifters that get paid fucking advertising revenue continue to get paid advertising revenue if they want to talk about. And it's not the salacious thing that gets fucking clicks is going through the documents of NQTEL. The Trump administration, there's no one, like, it pisses me off a bit as a libertarian to see like paleo libs and paleocons praise Trump, and he's like, he's going in like a bull in a china shop to disrupt things. And it's like, dude, he's targeting the obvious things to appease Americans. He's not running in and saying, why the fuck does the CIA get its own equity firm? He's not going in and saying, hey, why is the Pentagon, like, why are we giving them a 10-year window to be able to pass an audit? Like, he's not actually going in and doing anything. He's just getting headlines to feed his own ego, and his hands are mostly tied behind his back with all of the crazy shit that's going on. Like, a real fucking president that is a bull in a china shop would be Wyclef Jean's song, If I Was President, right? If I was president, I'd be elected on Friday, assassinated on Saturday, buried on Sunday. Like, he's not really shaking shit up. He's just making some corrections so that he can be the one step back in this 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
I don't know. I would say if we're looking at, that's kind of what I was going to bring up, is this government versus government thing we're doing. Trump is like, all right, the border's secure, did that on day one, 99% drop. They were bragging about that 99% drop in 1 month. And now we're down to almost nobody. So border's done, taken care of. Tariff, that's an ongoing thing right now. We had to suspend the tariff so we could do these negotiations. That being said, all the rest of his time is going into the very popular rooting out of DEI from all sorts of government funding. That's the reason they're going after Harvard. That's the reason they're going after all sorts of shit. And they are rooting out this from the base level and making sure no government money is going to it. On top of that, they're going into all sorts of government lawfare. So I don't know if you know the history of law a bit. I've only heard it mentioned, so this isn't coming from me. It's coming from other people. But apparently post Watergate, there was a time where Democrats took over and passed a lot of really stupid policies, some of which are the tariff policy that Trump is now taking advantage of to piss off Democrats. That being said, this is known as like an era of bad policy and bad decisions, and Trump is now going to war with like Humphrey's executor. He's going to war with the impoundment. He's going to war with the appointments. He's going to war with all these different rulings, as well as the interpretation of the 14th Amendment, which doesn't come from that time era. It comes from the late 1800s, but he's going to war with all these conventional thinking rulings. It's almost like, in a way, it's almost the largest audit of our legal system that I've ever seen in my life. Maybe it's unintentional, maybe it is intentional. A lot of people are theorizing the way he's going about it is intentional.
I for all of the reasons that I gave earlier, I think that it is, like I said, a game of whack-a-mole. Is very little. What you're talking about is there, after Watergate, there was an era of Democrats pushing for what they called good government, right? And one of the things that they were really upset about was like pork barrel and stuff like that, and government waste in that regard. And this is also kind of the beginning of political tribalism in politics, because once you got rid of the like, you used to be, before this, you used to be able to like go, I'll vote for this if you give me this, right? And then they got rid of the quid pro quo kind of thing. And so you used to find a lot of Democrats and Republicans, quote unquote, reaching across the aisle, and it was so that they could get, you know, some new stadium built for their fucking constituents, and then the constituents would be like, this guy's doing a bang up job. But yeah, I mean, like, there are certainly like certain acts and things that are going on, but again, if you're not getting, like, even if he's able to dial back a lot of those problems, all he's doing is dialing it back. Like, the system is what created these, and you're not fundamentally changing the system by getting rid of some red tape and getting rid of some regulations that are bad, and, like, you know, maybe getting rid of an agency or two. You know what I mean? It's like, well, we didn't have that prior to 1913. You know what I mean? But it's here
for sure. But Rome wasn't built in a day. In a way, like, think of what Dobbs did. Dobbs would start a trickle effect that potentially could overturn Obergefell and things like that. I think that's kind of what they're aiming for. They went all the way back into like the 1960s to reverse an executive order on how civil rights should be handled, because they wanted to rewrite that in a certain way to also include Jewish people. so that you couldn't exempt them from different college practices in the same way they were being right now. And like they're going back, and there's a lot of problems and a lot of subjects, and I feel like they are actually taking too big of a bite of the apple, especially with tariffs. I don't know if their administration could handle any more than what they're doing right now, because I think that they're actually moving so fast. They're making a lot of stupid, fucking sloppy mistakes.
I agree. I agree. Like, you know, like I saw Hans Hermann Hoppe, you know, gave a kind of like a refutation that Javier Milei wasn't a real libertarian, because if he was a real libertarian, he would, you know, abolish the national bank. And it's like, it's one of the few times I was like, Hoppe, shut the fuck up. Like, the dude has a coalition government with the Conservative Party. The dude does not have the power to just go in and be like, now we will do Ancapistan. But he's national, you know, he privatized a bunch of industry. He, you know, cut a bunch of regulations. He fired like 1/3 of the fucking government employees, and he brought the poverty rate from 52% down to 36%. In a relatively short time, and the, you know, and brought the inflation rate from like skyrocketing, you know, like it was like in the like well into the double digits per month, into like, you know, something that is almost akin to like our inflation rate. And it's like, yeah, like Rome wasn't built in a day. I completely agree with you. What I mean is that what we have is populism, and when populism comes to roost, there are kind of 3 directions your government goes, as far as I can tell. It either becomes more communist socialist, more fascistic, or more libertarian. And I mean that in a political compass lens kind of way. I don't mean like philosophically. So we have a great opportunity here, and I intend to capitalize on the opportunity by spreading the philosophy and pointing out the problems and where these things come from. I don't think Trump can abolish federal student loans. I don't think Trump can fucking, you know, get rid of, you know, Medicare, Medicaid. I don't think he's going to get rid of Social Security, right? All of those things I think are necessary for the survival of our nation. But I don't think that's, like you said, Rome wasn't built in a day. My channel name is Fabian Liberty, because Fabianism, right? The Fabian strategy, incrementalism, because I don't think these things happen overnight. You know, as my co-host, you know, loves using this quote, you know, great men plant seeds for trees of which the shade they will never sit in. And that's kind of where I see myself in that regard. You know, and not to be so hubristic as to think that I'm a great man, but just that like I'm one of many people pushing a philosophy. And so I see this as a wonderful opportunity, but I also have to hammer this concept when people are like, oh, yep, he's doing the good things. He's turning this ship around. It's like he is moving the ship 1 degree to the left, and we are still headed for the iceberg. And it's we have to move at least 15 degrees to avoid the iceberg, and we're going to run into more icebergs if we don't turn the ship around. And so I guess that's kind of like, I know that I come off as like kind of like nothing's good enough, you know what I mean? But like that is kind of my role in this conversation and in this greater political conversation, is to gatekeep libertarians like Dave Smith that begin to try and like just be fucking hang out with the right wingers and bullshit, and to, you know, keep pushing and push the philosophy and point out that no, he's not turning the ship around. He has turned the ship 1 degree to the left, and I celebrate that. But I don't. But make no bones about it, we're still headed for the iceberg.
Yeah. So in just terms of the capacity, like, if you look at there's an article, I want to say it was by the Washington Free Press or Free Beacon, one of those right-wing outlets from Washington. They talked about how Biden was the most lawless president. What they meant by that is he took the most liberal interpretations of the most laws that got challenged on a legal level, and he lost. And it was like talking about his parole authority and his illegal visa program for Venezuela and things of those nature. The highest amount. Well, if you look at Trump in his first 93 days, I think we're at right now, he is on pace to double Biden's first year in that regard. So in terms of how many legal cases the administration is up against, all the frivolous lawsuits or whatever they were being called, is 170 cases against them. And a lot of them, they're fighting in a way where they want to continue moving them forward to get them to SCOTUS, to have SCOTUS make a ruling on them. So
well, it's like, yeah, I mean, he's getting more
a lot.
challenges than like anybody ever. And
Yeah, so
some of that
they're
is because
moving-
what he's doing is destructive to the system. And a lot of that is just because they fucking hate Trump and they love me. They have the left, the liberal left, have not like the far left, but the liberal left have cornered themselves into this position where everything Trump does must be the greatest evil. And so by doing that, they have, you know what I mean? Like you saw this, there was this massive dissatisfaction with the Kamala Harris campaign that she wasn't aggressive enough, that Biden and Harris didn't prosecute enough, right? That they didn't do enough, because it's kind of, how do you paint someone as Hitler and then be like, well, we're going to let bygones be bygones. You know, Hitler will be back in 4 years. But for now, you know, we're just going to govern like the good people that we're being the best. You can't do those two things, right? You can't say he's Hitler and then say, but you know, we don't want to engage in too much lawfare, you know. So now that he's in power, they're kind of forced to bring up every single thing that they think they have a case on, even if it's dumb as fuck. They have to do it. They have to push it, because I see all the time. I see so many people, you know, on the left that are just like, you know, my senator, my people, they're not doing anything. Like, why are the Democrats not fighting this evil? Like, where is the fight? Where is the fighting spirit? And this is the danger that I was pushing, where I was saying earlier, is that when populism comes, there's only three choices: libertarian, fascist, more socialist. You don't have populism come in and then maintain status quo. You don't have populism come in and go, well, we're all going to come together and compromise. When populism comes in, people expect great change. And that great change has to come from more radical ends of the political spectrum. And so there's a reason why Twitter is full of fucking Nazis. There's a reason why, you know, you see people being like, well, we got to get rid of women's voting, and we got to make sure that, like, you know, we deport all of the illegals, even if they've been here for 20 years. I want mass deportations. This is what I voted for, right? Like massive government authoritarianism and large sweeping changes because we're in an existential threat. And to a degree, they're correct that we're in an existential threat. Their solutions are shit. And the left is going to be the same way. We need price controls. We need, you know, rent control. We need, we must get, you know, like, now is the time. We can no longer compromise on, you know, Medicare for all. We need, like, people are screaming that we need Bernie to be like, you know, Bernie's policies to be the next wave of the left. We see, you know, activist organizations and, you know, things like Progressive Victory that bought off Connor and bought off, you know, Wick and bought off Destiny and bought off all of the lefty Twitch streamers and gave them checks and money. And their whole goal was not to not get Trump elected. Their goal was to push the Democratic Party to the left. That's in their fucking mission statement, so that they could create a new wave of activists, you know, that will force the Democratic Party to be more progressive, more social democrat. Right? Like, one of these three is happening. And, you know, and so again, that's kind of where I see myself, is like, I'm one of the few voices that's like, yes, we need a massive deregulation and less government. That's the solution. And it scares me, genuinely scares me, to see how malleable Trump is, and to see some people like JD Vance and other people that want to use the power of the state to punish their enemies and increase the power to have control over culture and cultural outcomes, as opposed to not realizing that the problems that we're facing is the ballooning and the bloat of the state.
So I think the issue here is, I don't think Trump fits any of those criteria that you're saying. I think he puts on a mask of whatever he needs to appeal to the populace. And then when you actually look at his legislation, super big on deregulation, super big on cutting taxes, all these things that, like, more fit the conservative status quo than JD Vance would. I don't think that JD Vance is as popular as Trump fans think he is. I don't think he's going to be able to pick up the reins and just walk into a free victory in 2028, even if Democrats keep going down the destructive path. The theory I'm making right now for why the Democratic Party is acting the way it is they have a significantly higher percentage of the people that generally constitute as high propensity voters that come out for midterm elections, that come out for special elections, and they got 3 years of midterm and special elections coming up. They need to get those people pissed off, ginned up, donating money, and they totally are right now. Except they're donating money to David Hogg and AOC, who've collected $30 million in 1 quarter, and they're using it to primary other fucking Democrats. So in a way, it's almost like they use their big tent to reach out to these fucking leftists instead of people like me in the center, and now it's biting them in the ass, and I'm fucking loving every minute of it because I was the one that was scoring.
I know that this is probably way too early to make any predictions or anything. I think JD Vance is way more dangerous than everybody is giving him credit for. I think he is far more dangerous and is going to run a campaign that is going to be very successful. I think here's two major concerns I have for the Democrats. Not that I want them to gain power. I'm just, speaking descriptively here. Number one, Democrats have depended for a very long time on Jewish donors. It's just true. And Democrats that are trying to primary like the more neoliberal Democrats are using their funding that requires Jewish donors to try and primary the AIPAC candidates. And that is a war that I don't see them winning when someone like JD Vance, who is far more reasonable and far more well-spoken and far more charismatic than Trump, not charismatic in the sense that Trump gets the memes and the jokes and the bastes, right? But JD Vance is able to sell himself as the reasonable person in a room. And when you have the Jewish donor class see that and see all their AIPAC candidates lose over the next couple of elections to progressives that are more pro-Palestine, I think you're going to see a lot of wealthy Jewish donors that are like, you think I care about fucking trans kids in schools? I care about what keeps making me money. And you people fucking hate me because I'm a Jew. And they're going to be slyly donating to a Vance campaign, and they're going to switch from donating to Democrats, or at the very least, they're going to take their money and run. They're going to keep their money. That's number one. Oh, go ahead.
In this election is in New York City, exactly what you are saying happened. 50-50 split on Jewish vote in New York City, which is usually 80-20, if not more. So they're absolutely.
And then you see Trump and JD come out and fight Harvard to protect, students from anti-Semitism. Who do you think, those are the kids of the Jewish donor class. Like, that's who those kids are that they're attacking, right? Their parents are fucking well-connected Jewish donor class. Like, it's a horrible idea for the Democrats to not be able to take a hard stance against these pro-Palestine people. And the second thing is that I think Trump derangement syndrome is in large part, it's the media, it's Hollywood, right? But it's also a large part the young TikTok influencer, crowd. And I think that that's really easy to do with Trump because Trump says wild, crazy shit. And I think they're going to try and employ the same tactics against Trump, against JD Vance. And JD Vance is going to end up looking like the adult in the room. Like, I think obviously to the left and the far left, the super far left will sit out of the election. They're fucking, some of them are like MAGA communism, right? The tankies and shit. But like the progressive social democrats and the neoliberals are going to try the same tactics they use against Trump. And I don't see it working as well against JD Vance. But again, I don't like JD Vance. I really don't like, I dislike JD Vance way more than I like Trump. I don't trust his background. I don't like a guy that's that smooth. He speaks and talks like a real elite, he's got a very well-crafted origin story that all feels a little too Manchurian to me. And more than anything, I've read his, articles on economics and political philosophy. And he is a big government Like, you want to talk about where the pro-tariff idea is coming from as opposed to the free trade? It's coming from Vance. Vance fucking loves tariffs. Vance loves economic protectionism. Vance is a nationalist. He's a civic nationalist, less of a neocon than like previous people like Kissinger or Buckley and people like that. But he is certainly economically an enemy of libertarians.
He's an Elizabeth Warren conservative.
Who said that?
I just made that up, but that's where he really fits in.
Okay,
He
are
really
you
does.
only streaming to Twitch?
Yeah.
Okay, guys. If you're enjoying this conversation, I need you to go to Average Debate Enjoyer's Twitch and give him a follow if you ever check out Twitch. There is no fucking reason whatsoever. Look, you could not like Average Debate Enjoyer. You could think that maybe he plays the fence or devil's advocate too much in panels, which he does, right? But the fact that I'm looking at him right now and he has one viewer 2 hours in is, at least that's what Twitch is telling me on my end, is a fucking travesty. I just refreshed it. Like, I just gave you the link in chat. Go give him a follow. Check him out every now and then. There are nights that I'm not live. Like, fucking, if you're bored and you want to give a support to somebody on a panel that is at least intellectually curious about ideas, fucking follow this guy. Because there's about 40 of you in here right now, which is decent, whatever. But give the man a view or two. You know what I mean? And just for the record, I'm always on YouTube. I don't stream to Twitch because I don't want to get banned on Twitch and then not be able to do Twitch panels. So if I'm doing a fucking panel with Average Debate Enjoyer, guess what? You can pull Average Debate Enjoyer up on Twitch and then mute the fucking tab and then fucking hop back in my chat. Because I'm not live on Twitch. Unless I get banned off of YouTube.
I got one of the little 20-year-old streamers helping me set my stuff up because he knows his way through all of it. I'm a programmer that doesn't know anything about programming.
No, that's it's a special type of knowledge. Does he have a YouTube? Yeah, you have a YouTube, don't you?
Yeah. It's non-fun. He's a nice little guy. I think that if I give him some good influence on his argument construction, he's got the brain for it. He's just trying to be Destiny, and I don't like it.
Yeah, non-fun is... I've debated him. It's okay.
He's trying to be Destiny too much, where he actually has good... I've seen him mid-debate. His brain clicks in a good way. And he's capable. He's just isn't going down the right path. But I got to go feed the dogs and myself. So I'm pretty much tapped out. Every question I had, and then shit I wrote down during the debate I got to, except for something about China that we got so far past already.
China.
But I am going to look up 3 of the names you gave me. I'm going to look up Blinkist on them and see if I could find any books for those as well.
Road to Serfdom, if there's anything that is like that, I don't even know what program. I just heard you describe it, and I can almost guarantee it's on there. Road to Serfdom is a well-known book that is kind of like mandatory reading for a lot of people going through macroeconomics in college. That's usually about the only Austrian they'll read in college.
All right, I'll check that one out first.
Yeah. But all right, brother. Yeah. It was nice seeing you. Like I said, follow Average Debate Enjoyer and, follow him on Twitter as well. Follow him in all the places. And I'll see you around.
Gibbs wants me to send you this and say, have you seen the highlights? And I got to go.
Is it Connor admits he's racist and believes in eugenics?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, he DM'd it to me. I'm about to watch it here in a second. I was trying to not to let anybody know. I was just gonna pull it up and be like, let's see what's happening here. You know what I mean? But it's fine. It's fine. That's what I'm pulling up as soon as I get my camera switched over here in just a second. So, all right, brother, you have a good one.
All right, see you Monday at Prime.
Yeah. All right, hold on. Stop virtual cam. Pull this up. All right, let's check out this video that he sent me. I gotta see this clip. Apparently Connor on Prime fucking what's his name? Admiral Gibbs has a fucking hate boner for fucking Prime. What I think I've talked to him a couple times, Brian. He's I've been on a couple panels with him. We just haven't done a one-on-one. Actually, we did do a one-on-one thing a while ago. I have to see this. Let me see what happened. Oh, I have Twitch muted. I forgot.
You are
This guy Connor is the one that I debated on Tim Pool, and kind of everyone in Tim Pool now knows exactly what he is because I brought it up. I was like, "Oh, Midas, oh, cool, that's your new leftist organization," and like gave him shit for progressive victory. And like I remember seeing Tim Pool's face. I don't think it's on camera. It didn't cut to him, but I remember seeing him be like, "Oh," it was so good to watch Tim Pool just be like, "Oh," when I called him out for fucking progressive victory and shit. So. But Admiral Gibbs was like, dude, you gotta fucking get him to, you gotta attack him on being a eugenicist and a racist. And I was like, I don't have any good concrete evidence, and I don't know when like that's gonna conveniently I don't know when that's gonna conveniently come up or anything. So I don't know. It's like I'm not there to be an attack dog and exactly like you said, Brian TV, be like Jerry Springer or whatever. But if he's gonna start talking about his fucking organizations and shit, I'll call him out. I'm a eugenicist, Jesus Christ.
Oh,
thank you. Does it get you what you fucking want?
No. You are subhuman. You are subhuman. You can't say that. Complex ideas. You don't know.
First of all, isn't subhuman banned on Twitch because it's Ubermensch, Nazi shit because of Germany or whatever? Isn't subhuman one of those things you're not actually allowed to say? I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's one of the banned words on Twitch.
Ideas. You don't understand
complex idea. You're rejecting complex ideas.
No,
yeah,
basically,
this
is
what we do.
Connor, give them credit. Lactoid. I got a definition word for it.
I think they're right about something.
Lactoid. In law, did you ever have to study psychology? Because I think what we're experiencing right here is one word: projection. He's so dumb that he can't understand complex topics. So his defense is to call us dumb whenever we point out the inconsistencies of this argument. Subhuman. That's a very Nazi argument. Do you have your white pointy hat anywhere? Because that's what I.
It's a very Nazi argument. Do you have your white pointy hat anywhere? I fucking love Gibbs sometimes. Oh, shit. Oh, that's so fucking funny.
Waiting for next.
Yeah, I'm more racist than you. I also believe in eugenics. I still think you're a massive retarded piece of shit, and I wish that you would get a vasectomy.
We got a racist eugenics guy here. That's good.
I mean, it's hard to tell. I don't think he's joking, man. I think he might just be straight up racist, man. Nobody is more racist than a right-wing grifter taking leftist money, I guess, right? That's fucking wild. Also, I want to point out that's not really how projection works, right? You don't project a lack of understanding. You project your own, you know what? There's no point in getting into Freudian projection. Some of the self-defense mechanisms or defense mechanisms were right by Freud. And his daughter. Most of it was his daughter, believe it or not. But yeah, I mean, people don't tend to project lack of understanding, but I guess, I mean, that wouldn't fit a classical definition, but yeah, maybe it would. But that is hilarious. It's always the libs. So I'm trying to think. I think I'm going to save. I think I'm going to save some of the reactions and stuff for tomorrow. I was going to get into it, but now that I think about it, I think tomorrow we'll just do a big gaming stream and reaction stream. We'll just do all reactions and go through a cool little marathon of stuff. So I have some stuff that I want to react to. Let me just get into the center. All right, here we go. I have some stuff that I want to react to. If you guys join the Discord and either DM me or at me in media recommendations or something, stuff that you want me to look at tomorrow, we'll kind of go through a marathon and I'll play some Civ 6 or something, and we'll just power through some reactions, and kind of make tomorrow just an all reaction day thing. So definitely click the link in the description to join the Discord if you're not already in the Discord, and send me your stuff. Obviously, you could just super chat me shit tomorrow, and I'll definitely check it out. I'll always do it for money, boys. But yeah, we'll do some reactions tomorrow. Because this conversation went on a little longer than I thought it would, and I just don't want to get into a reaction and change the vibe of the stream and only get like one video done. I think it'd be a lot more fun if we just like kind of crammed them in tomorrow and did like a whole reaction day thing. Nuclear stigma and eugenics stigma isn't too dissimilar in my opinion. Oh my God. I always catch the end of the stream. Well, I mean, you can always catch up on the stream, but tomorrow will probably be a long stream because I want to do multiple reactions, and so we'll start at like 6, and we'll just like hang out for a little bit, and then we'll just get right into it because I want to get through multiple pieces of content. Eugenics is for artards? No, I think eugenics is to get rid of artards. I think that's the whole point. So like, share, subscribe. Click that notification bell, but if you really want to be notified when I go live, join the Discord. Follow me on, what is it, Zitter, Twitter, X. If you want to see my shower thoughts and watch me be toxic, consider joining the channel for only $3.99. Get badge, get some emotes. It's fun time. But the best bang for your buck if you want to support the channel and you want to give me money is just a super chat. There's a direct Streamlabs link where I'll get a higher percentage of your money. But super chats help boost the algorithm and makes the content interactive and engaging, and I always answer super chats, so I really appreciate you guys. I had a fun conversation, and like I said, we'll come back tomorrow and do that. I don't know, I may or may not be on a panel Sunday, even though I have my kids this weekend, or it might be next weekend. We'll just kind of have to see what happens, but looks like people are trying to put together a tariff panel. I have like some stuff planned for next Tuesday. And then I'm trying to have this fucking conversation with Noah from Midwestern Marks on queer theory and critical theory. But every time I hit him up, he's like, dude, I'm sorry, I'm so busy. So like he said, he's busy until like the 4th. But I really want to have a good long conversation about critical theory and queer theory with Midwestern Marks. Because I think, God, that is a conversation that needs to happen. Because there's just very few people I can talk to that are actually knowledgeable about these subjects, while at the same time, giving completely different perspectives and like well-read things. And yeah, I want to start. As much as I hate commies, it's, I think, really important for us to talk to them, the ones that are well-read, because so many libertarians just have a surface level understanding of what Marxists think and believe. So critical theory starts in the Frankfurt School and is the precursor to critical legal studies, which is the precursor to critical race theory. But queer theory is also stems from critical theory. Critical theory is essentially the neo-Marxist kind of wokeness. That's where it all begins. It all begins in the Frankfurt School. But if you really want to learn more about critical theory, critical race theory, critical legal studies, queer theory, when I have that conversation, that is the time to be like, show up for that, because it's going to be me and a full-blown Marxist, both of which are adamantly opposed to critical theory and all of that, with very different perspectives getting into it. We're going to get into, feminism and queer theory and critical pedagogy and things like that. And the corporations and the CIA and, different domains of why they exist and what their philosophical axioms are. It's going to, whenever I do finally have that conversation, I think it's going to be an amazing conversation. So I definitely want to see you guys there for that. If you want to get good content or check it out later, but I will see you guys tomorrow. And we'll, like I said, join the Discord and like at me if there's something you want me to react to. Obviously, if it's like 2 hours and you didn't pay a super chat or whatever, we might not get to it, right? But if it's like a 5-minute or 10-minute video, and there's not too many people asking, then we'll probably get to it at some point. You're a turtle. 1,000. Thank you. All right, guys. But I will see you tomorrow. Will I react to one of your favorite anime ops? What the fuck is an anime op? Oh, anime openings? Yeah, sure. What's your favorite anime opening? I'm just curious. I know it's pedestrian as fuck, but mine is the Bluebird from Naruto. Like I've watched a lot of anime, but I really love the arc that is, it's like a non-manga arc. This one is like one of my, like, I just really loved this one. While we're doing it, we'll close out the stream with this. But this is one of my favorite anime openings. And I know it's so, like I said, I know it's so pedestrian because the stream is about to fucking cancel because I'm getting copyrighted. It's so fucking stupid. All right, boys, I'm getting out anyways.